You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
If you're playing this tape, then I'm already dead. You are my only hope. They're watching. They're waiting. Take the money, the list, and the gun. And when you shoot to kill.
On the streets of Hong Kong, a war is raging between the criminals who rule the city and the terrorists who threaten the world. One man is caught in the middle. And he'll need all the help he can get.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Jean-Claude Van Damme continues into February. We got a big finale for you guys. We got an old friend, Dolph. He's coming back. New friend, Jean-Claude Van Damme. You guys got to join the sleaze. It's going to be awesome. And we're breaking the rules a little bit, but
That's true.
I'll save that for later. So join the sleaze.
That's right. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air showdown and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we are in our 5th year of. There's like 120, 130 plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films. And there was a ton of January trash that came out at the beginning of 2023 that we are going to be talking about very soon. So look forward to that. If you haven't made the jump, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, and we recommend that. And speaking of which, we did have quite a few people to give their shoutouts to this month. So we had PP O'Connell, who signed up for an entire year of the show, which is something that you can do. You get a little bit of a discounted rate if you sign up for a year in advance, which PP O'Connell did. So thanks so much. We had Dizzle Sizzle sign up at the $5 tier. We had Alex Wood. We had Bill Fraser. We had Junior Minty. We had Ethan Sturgill. We had Alyssa Bonanno, who signed up once also at the annual tier. We had Jason Neiman sign up for $5. We had Parker Meadows also sign up at the annual tier. Lots of people getting on the annual tier. If you want to hear the show, speaking of which, Kyle Gannis also at the annual tier. Everyone's getting in on
great.
it. It's 2023, the year of the Sleazoids annual tier. We had Theodore Rawson. We had Kenny Hedges sign up. We had Neither sign up. Trash Legs, great name, and Sam Doherty. So thanks so much to all of you folks. Hope you're enjoying those bonus episodes. We really appreciate the support. And that's the one plug for the week. The other plug for the week, as always, is Apple Podcast and Spotify. If you are listening on either one of those platforms, and I see the stats, I see you right now listening on both those platforms, making shifty eyes right now. Scroll down to the very bottom. Give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the very last plug for the week is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for the podcast, you can get that basically put on anything that you can think of. You can just get a poster, you can get a hoodie, a pen, a notebook, anything that you can think of. That is at the link in the description, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome, and welcome to the tail end of January, the month-long exploration that we have been doing over on the Sleazoids podcast on the muscles from Brussels himself, Jean-Claude Van Damme. We have been going pretty hard, and I'm certain that most people have been listening, but if you haven't, 3 weeks ago we kicked things off where we talked about the big breakout. We talked about the child prodigy, kickboxer, martial artist, ballet dancer, turned movie star in the films Bloodsport and Kickboxer for the Canon Group. We did that exclusively over on the Patreon, and we had a really great deep dive into his origins and how he got found doing extra work for the Canon Group's break dancing musical Breakin'. Yes, he got the first bit of film of him, other than in like legitimate tournament settings, is him just dancing in the background of a scene, and it's very beautiful if you go out and find it. So we started there, and then we moved on 2 weeks ago with a special guest, Brandon from the Dad Core Cinema Club, where we were talking Lionheart and Double Impact. We were getting into Van Damme being directed by his good friend Sheldon Lettich, who wrote the screenplay for Bloodsport, and actually co-writing the films himself. And we got a good glimpse into what Jean-Claude Van Damme saw as his own image, what kind of roles he wanted to write for himself, how he wanted to prove he was more than just a amazing athlete who could say one-liners in an action film, and he wanted to actually flex his dramatic chops.
Give him those close-ups and let the tears fly, baby.
Dude, give him monologues about how the world is unfair, and he's looking at the class disparity of New York City. And Double Impact, he's having crazy, you got good Van Damme and bad Van Damme. He's double acting in 2 roles and also cucking himself in crazy fantasy visions and expanding.
That was one of my favorite conclusions that we came up with, was that he realized the only person that could cuck Van Damme was Van Damme. That's just great.
And he wrote it, which is just also beautiful. Right. So, it was a great exploration into Jean-Claude, the auteurist image presence. And then last week over on the Patreon, we moved on to Jean-Claude has officially asserted himself. He's the industry now recognizes him as an actor capable of handling the filmmakers and budgets that you might see another actor like Stallone or a Bruce Willis, for example, 2 actors who were actually approached to do one of the films we covered last week, where we talked about his collaborations with veteran studio filmmaker Peter Hyams, and he did the sci-fi thriller Time Cop with him, which is literally Van Damme as a police of time travel. And it's a little bit low rent for knocking off things like Total Recall and the Terminator, but Peter Hyams really sturdy, widescreen filmmaker, and got some pretty nicely choreographed action going on in that. And then Sudden Death, which was Peter Hyams and Van Damme reteaming after Time Cop was the biggest box office success of his career, to do their version of Die Hard. And it basically is one of my favorite pieces of Die Hard plagiarism, just having
it's great.
Powers Booth in the Alan Rickman role. It's not in a corporate office. It's at the Pittsburgh Penguins arena during the Stanley Cup Finals. And he fights a mascot. He gets in the goalie gear. It's beautiful.
Yeah, he goes onto the splitting rooftop as it's opening up and does like a big finale
that crane
fight.
Shot that goes from the ice all the way to the roof in the middle of the fight. It's unbelievable. Him and Peter. Sudden Death was probably my favorite film that we've covered
me
so
too,
far this month. So if you haven't heard that episode, that was last week's over on the Patreon. Go check that out. But moving on to this week, as you can tell, we've been moving chronologically, and we have covered a really good portion of Jean-Claude Van Damme. We've went from, his B-movie origins. We went to him, starting to flex in the writing and hiring his own directors, getting more power over his stories, to him being a full-fledged studio action star, making huge box office turns for Universal and Sony, having quite a career. And we are now at the point where we are talking about the end of Jean-Claude Van Damme, the theatrical action star. I don't know if I'd have to double check, but these might be some of the last movies that he ever got that were put into theaters. And to talk about these films, we needed to have a very special guest who I've been wanting to have on for a while. He is a graphic designer, he's a writer, he's an editor, he's a musician, and he is especially a film programmer of a wonderful martial arts screening series here in Toronto called Black Belt Cinema, and that guest is Brandon Lim. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing great, y'all. Thanks for having me here for January. It's an honor to be here. Short-time listener, first-time guest. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
No. But when I was putting guests together for a Jean-Claude month, I was like, you were at the top of the list, because I was like, this guy, he's probably he programs a Jean-Claude movie once a year for his own series, and some of the films that you've played or stuff that we've covered. You played Showdown in Little Tokyo just a couple months ago. That was one of our absolute blast films that we covered in Dolph Month, which was the last time we did a series on an actor.
Yeah, that's amazing. I also love your Dolph recorded intro that you somehow got him to do.
Too.
That was amazing. It just tickles that sweet spot every time I hear it. I'm like, oh my God, it's Dolph Lundgren. And he's introducing those
surreal moments in the history of the show,
surreal.
Definitely.
How did that even come? How did that come together?
Oh, well, you know what, dude? He was on a little service you might have heard of called Cameo.
Oh, of course. Yes, that makes perfect sense.
He was super nice though, because I think Josh was saying that he only wrote out a few lines, and he ended up giving us 2.5, 3 minutes of.
No, he was wonderful. You could even tell that he actually looked up the show and looked up stuff about it. It was very funny because when you do that, you write into them. You can give them a tweet length of stuff, and he talked for 2 minutes straight.
Oh wow!
And gave us some life advice and everything. We were like, Dolph's the king. We were so glad that we. Did a series on him and discovered some great films, which led us to wanting to do this Jean-Claude one as well. But that being said, we are nearing the tail end of January here. So Brandon, what 2 films are we talking about, and what era of Jean-Claude's career are we in this week?
Well, you did bring up how we're approaching that era of his last theatrical releases, and it's funny you talk about Sudden Death because that actually was the last film of his that got a wide theatrical release up until JCVD, obviously decades later. But Sudden Death was the last movie that played in theaters starring Jean-Claude Van Damme before he was banished to direct-to-video purgatory.
Oh shit! Wow. See, I thought these got some kind of theatrical release. No, because they do have box office reports on them.
Well, maybe I'm a liar, Josh. We're going to have to look that up. But I was under the assumption...
This is where we will have the listeners. Yeah. Let us know. Yell at us. Tell us what
happened with our inaccuracies, please.
But I do think that you are right that Sudden Death is probably the last time that he would have gone, I think, a full wide push. He might have got some small...
I think you're right because Legionnaire... I believe was his first direct-to-video film that didn't arrive in theaters. So you know what? I'm wrong. It was Legionnaire. Whatever came out before Legionnaire was probably
I think Knockoff. Film. I think Knockoff is the last thing before Legionnaire.
What a movie to go out on, though.
Exactly. So what 2 films are we talking about, Brandon?
We are doing Maximum Risk and Knockoff, both paired together for their Hong Kong directors, that being Ringo Lam, who directed Maximum Risk, of course, and Choi Hawk, who directed Knockoff.
Yeah, very, very excited.
Too. I mean, it's great that we're doing these 2 episodes together. They're both Hong Kong directors. And, Jean-Claude Van Damme is obviously well known for shepherding a lot of these iconic Hong Kong action directors to Hollywood, especially around this time of the, Chinese takeover of Hong Kong from being a British colony in 1997, which... Knockoff takes place during. So I wonder what it is about Van Damme that has attracted so many of these directors to sort of take him on as this kind of entry point into Hollywood, because it's happened with obviously John Woo and Hard Target. I believe Jean-Claude had reached out to Ringo Lam about doing Maximum Risk because he just seems to love Hong Kong, the country, and Hong Kong cinema. He's genuinely super passionate about it. I think one of his first films his first big films that he shot there, I believe, was Bloodsport. Was actually shot in Hong Kong, and
Bloodsport is half a travelogue of just Hong Kong, which I imagine is where he fell in love with it, and the fighting culture, and I imagine that was just something that appealed to him before he even was thinking about being a filmmaker, and then all of a sudden, you just have some of the best filmmakers who actually know how to shoot martial artists doing work over there, a huge martial arts culture that's so different than, U.S. action. And so it is really interesting. And, Jean-Claude deserves a lot of credit for using every bit of his clout, literally until he was kicked out of theatrical filmmaking, using every bit of his clout to bring insanely talented Hong Kong action filmmakers and give their chance to American movies. And, we covered a huge part of that when we we talked with Will Menaker and we did an episode on Hard Target and Double Team was the previous time we did. So this is technically a sequel episode to Jean-Claude working with Hong Kong auteurs. And yeah, these are also, he put it all on the line for, two kind of box office failures, conspiracy thrillers, one directed by Ringo Lam, one directed by Choi Hawk. And yeah, I'm excited to get into it here because they're very different films, very different stylistic approaches.
Wildly different, yeah.
Yes, but both definitely have Hong Kong filmmakers lensing it, and you still got Jean-Claude, the athlete, pushing. I think that was partially why they liked working with him so much, is he put a lot of effort into. When we talked about Hard Target, we specifically were like, I feel like he could physically do what Wu would have to make American actors look like they could do, and I feel like they definitely appreciated that. So that being said, I think we are going to jump right into it here. Let's start off with Maximum Risk.
From internationally acclaimed action director Ringo Lam. Jean-Claude Van Damme and Natasha Henstridge of Species. Maximum Risk. Welcome to the other side of safe.
Maximum Risk. You know what I really love about the opening of this film is the title sequence. It kind of comes on in black and white, Maximum Risk. It's black and white with like a spotlight that just sort of pans across it, and then it disappears. And then the title comes back again in blue and red with this like sick like typewriter looking font. I'm just like, damn, they just doubled down on this like opening title. Great job.
Yes, that's awesome. All right, we are talking Maximum Risk, a.k.a. The Exchange, a.k.a. Bloodstone.
Yeah.
Lots of different titles. So it's the 1996 American action thriller directed by Ringo Lam and, of course, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. And coming after working with Peter Hyams, as we were mentioning, but Jean-Claude, because of the films that he was doing with him, he had like some pretty unbelievable clout to work with. So much so that he got in between Sudden Death and Maximum Risk here, he actually got his directorial debut off the ground, The Quest, which we aren't covering this month, but I did happen to watch in between these sessions because I wanted to check it out. And it's strange because we talked so much about how Van Damme wanted to separate himself from fighting tournament movies, and he wanted to show that he could do other kinds of stuff. And it's so funny that his directorial debut is like going back to Bloodsport territory and literally giving writing credit back to Frank Dukes and actually like the pathological liar who Bloodsport was based on, and actually getting sued by Frank Dukes for making the movie.
I did hear that. Yeah.
He was almost kind of like a proto Seagal, lying about these like underground like death tournaments, working for the CIA and all this stuff.
Yes, straight up. Yeah.
He's almost kind of like a real life Seagal that wasn't an actor. I don't know.
His story's kind of amazing, and my favorite detail about him taking Jean-Claude to court over The Quest was that he told the court that the evidence that Van Damme plagiarized the movie from him, he lost it because it was a verbal agreement, and he lost the recording in an earthquake. And I was like, this dude's just the best liar in history.
That is great. Like, yes,
I love how it's also like it's a huge lie. It's like something that has like a natural disaster has to happen. It's not just like, some little accident or something like that. He's so funny.
A sinkhole just opened up and the tape recorder just fell right in there.
Yeah. And the Quest is interesting because Van Damme, you can tell, having worked with Hyams, having worked with Wu, he actually is, a decently, he's got some craft when it comes to actually shooting his own action and shooting his own fights. And the last 30 minutes is, some pretty impressive tournament fighting that is probably better directed than most of the tournament fighting in Bloodsport. Unfortunately, though, The Quest is also like what feels like a 3-hour adventure epic that's been cut to like 85 minutes. It's wild in terms of tone. Like, you got Van Damme doing stuff with Roger Moore, who sells him into slavery. You get like Van Damme in old makeup telling you a fairy tale story about his life in the 1920s, where he's beating up cops in clown attire. You know,
how does his old age makeup compare to like how he looks now as actual old Van Damme? Would you say?
Yeah, do they go way over the top with it? Do you remember?
Yeah, do you know what? It was kind of weird. They didn't. They kind of went a little too gray on the hair, but other than that, he doesn't look that different. You know, they did a decent job. I'll say.
We need the 3-hour cut of the quest. That's what we need.
Give us the director's cut.
Yes.
4K UHD Blu-ray.
Yep. But so he did that in between, and I don't think that went particularly well for him. And he decided that he wanted to kind of continue the style experimentation of working with Hong Kong directors, like he did with his American debut Hard Target, where he brought Wu and his huge, expressive, sort of heightened, balletic, heroic bloodshed visual style to American audiences via this like Southern Bayou Western, most dangerous game film, the outlaw Western.
It really feels like a Western. There's just so many amazing Western shots in it. Like that's the best way to describe it.
I will never forget that part where he brushes his duster aside, like the mythic American cowboys of old, to reveal like a 6-shooter, and instead it's just his thigh. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite moments in any one of his films.
All you need.
Yeah, and just Cajun homeless drifter cowboy with the wettest ramen noodle mullet you've ever seen, punching snakes. It's beautiful.
Dripping wet.
But that's just it. Is Jean-Claude, he didn't stop at Wu, because once again he was responsible for bringing over Choi Hawk when they did Double Team together, which we'll talk about briefly when we move on to Choi Hawk's other American film that he did with him next. But he also brought over, and I think kind of on the lower end of sort of, you know, from what I've seen, like people talk about his movies, I don't see Maximum Risk talked about in the same way his other Hong Kong collaborations are talked about, even his other Ringo Lambs that he did, like Replicant and stuff like that. So his collaborations with Ringo Lam, I think, kind of are the third tier for people when they go down the Jean-Claude Hong Kong collaborations. And the last time we talked about Ringo Lam, who we do accept, by the way, as an honorary Canadian Torontonian filmmaker due to him studying his craft at York University.
Oh, he studied at York? I had no idea.
He did. He studied. Yeah, dude. He went to acting school with Sammo Hung, and then he came over to Toronto and studied film at York, and then went back and did City on Fire. It's an insane life story.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Yep. So alongside John Woo, Ringo Lam is, you know, responsible for, as we talked about with City on Fire, kind of popularizing the heroic bloodshed movement of gangster gun fu and physical expression of melodrama through the kind of storytelling there. You even have Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee, who would later go on to co-star in John Woo's The Killer together in City on Fire.
Right.
Doing some classic sort of heroic bloodshed, brotherly melodrama, men on opposite sides of the law, but with shared codes and, you know, all this guilt over the violence. And that film we specifically talked about when it came to Ringo Lam versus Wu, that Ringo Lam doesn't have quite as much as that sort of like graceful pageantry as Wu likes to have. Like, he's all about blunt force and kind of gruesomeness.
Trauma. His filmmaking, it's still very kinetic, but it's a little bit more brutal. Every single like punch or gunshot looks and feels so painful. It's really over the top. Like, it's just brutal. There's not like any like fancy like kung fu fighting. It's just like, it's almost like a barroom brawl is just unfolding in front of your eyes. Have
you seen Full Contact?
Style. Yes, definitely.
No.
With Lam Ching Wan. Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's got all that. It's just like the bombastic violence and macho, kind of machismo and all that. He is very blunt about what he's putting on screen.
That was a big movie when it came out. It won a lot of awards. I remember just walking around in Chinatown back when they used to have all those bootleg DVD and VCD stores, and there was tons of copies of Full Contact kicking around. Those were the days, though, when you would just discover random Hong Kong action movies like that, like in Chinatown or Pacific Mall. I don't know if you guys ever been to Pacific Mall before, but it used to be this iconic place where you would just go take chances on random Hong Kong like video discs and DVDs and just discover amazing gems like full alert. Wait, did you say Full Alert or Full Contact?
Full Contact.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. Full Contact's the one with Chow Yun-fat. I was thinking of Full Alert, the one with Lam Ching Wan. I got that mixed up.
Okay, I don't know if I've seen Full Alert actually. I'll have to watch.
Full Alert is pretty good. I would honestly say Full Contact is his most like entertaining. It has an amazing style to it. It's shot in Thailand. It's just like a super dank, like sweaty movie. Amazing, like red and blue lights. Great characters. You've got Simon Yam just hamming it up as this like very flamboyant villain, and the homoeroticism between Simon Yam and Chow Yun-fat in that film is just off the charts. Like it's amazing. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and City on Fire has that bromance too, if I remember correctly.
Sure.
Yeah, well, that was one of my favorite parts, is because City on Fire, you have Chow Yun-fat as the undercover informer for the cops trying to take down Danny Lee's crew of like ruthless jewelry heisters, but so much of the focus is like his crisis of becoming their friends and then guiding them to their deaths, and that seems to be like Ringo Lam. Like he definitely has a visual style to the action. He definitely like overplays and exaggerates stuff. Like you could say that City on Fire is like more realistic by heroic bloodshed gun fu standards, but like someone will still like shoot one shot into a car and it'll explode. Like it's still very
right.
expressive and bombastic in that kind of way, but it's also tuned in to a level of intensity that is, again, as we kind of mentioned, like less graceful and more blunt. Like he very loves jarring action scenes that turn into foot chases, that turn into car chases, that turn into gunfights and just go and it's a very similar sensibility that he brings to Maximum Risk, which is Jean-Claude Van Damme playing a French cop named Alain Moreau, who finds out that essentially he has an identical twin brother, double impact style, which is a nice little, he loves playing the twin brother.
Yeah.
He's been kind of obsessed with it since he wrote it for himself many years ago. But in this case, he only finds his dead brother's body at a crime scene, and that's how he discovers his existence, and it leads to him investigating it and eventually uncovering some sort of international conspiracy involving ruthless Russian mobsters and some renegade FBI agents who are in collusion with them. And of course, because part of the reason he loves the twin brother thing is that the brother's girlfriend will mistake him for the boyfriend, and
so like the third or fourth time that this has happened. I feel like
he just it's the most romantic situation he can conceive of, is that just like a woman doesn't realize that he's not the he's as handsome as her real boyfriend, but not actually her boyfriend. And it results anyway in like a series of pretty intense set pieces globetrotting from the south of France in Nice to New York City, or Toronto as New York City, and a couple other locations that they also filmed, where he's also trying to obviously solve the case of his brother's murder throughout all of this conspiratorial stuff. And I think for Jamie, was this your first time watching this too, or am I the only one here? First time watch?
Yeah, this was my first time watching Maximum Risk.
Ooh, okay, so let's ask Brandon. Brandon, what was your first experience with Maximum Risk?
Well, I definitely saw this. I either saw this in theaters or I must have just rented it on video. I remember seeing this movie. I don't remember a whole lot about it. Didn't really stand out. It wasn't one of those JCVD movies I would often, revisit, like Kickboxer or Bloodsport. But this second time, maybe it was my third time watch, I had totally forgotten that there was twins in this movie. It actually blew my mind. I remember I actually messaged Josh when I found out. I was just like, oh my God, this is another JCVD twins movie. What the hell? Because I was so confused at the funeral scene. I'm like, wait, he's at his own funeral? What's happening? And then,
that was definitely the opening shock of the movie. It's what they wanted. They wanted you to be like, you're watching a Van Damme movie, but then Van Damme dies in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and they wanted everyone to be like, what the fuck?
They don't promote it. I don't recall them promoting it in the movie's like trailer or like press release or anything like that, unlike, something like Double Impact. I mean, obviously, they played off that novelty before. Maybe they didn't want to double down on it so overtly. But it is incredible that he would make another movie like this and also have this situation where he's, having this romantic connection with his twin's lover. Nothing more romantic than that.
Yeah. They also did it again, like later on in 2001 with Replicant, which is interesting. Yes. And it's funny too, Ringo Lam, I forgot about this, but he did Twin Dragons with Jackie Chan, where he also does twins.
So Ringo Lam loves it too.
Yeah.
This is probably why they bonded. Like, we need to get this other, like, twins guy in on this. Like, he's the right man. He's the Twins Dragon. We need him.
Let's find the two guys into martial arts action films who are, like, obsessed with twin brother stories. Get them together. And the one thing I'll say about Maximum Risk is that, Ringo Lam is definitely bringing some of the heroic bloodshed stylization over. But what's kind of interesting about it is that because of the way that it's written, it's actually very light on like that kind of melodrama, or like, I guess because the brother dies, he doesn't have like even the double impact stuff where he has like heightened drama scenes with himself or anything. The brother just kind of dies right away. So, you know, it's one of those things. And also, I think part of it is also, this is an American scribe as always, but at this point in Van Damme's career. Larry Ferguson wrote this, who did Beverly Hills Cop 2 and like one of the lesser Peter Hyams films that I watched called the Presidio with like Sean Connery and Mark Harmon is in it. And it's a script that's just like not as attuned, I think, to the kind of drama that you would find in a Hong Kong action film, and instead kind of hangs the whole film over kind of like the mystery revenge over his brother, and kind of like very loosely strings together some set pieces and some car chases and some strip club shootouts and bathhouse fights and all kinds of stuff that we'll get into. And I think what really holds the movie together is that Ringo Lam just has such a kinetic movement and intensity for him, where he's just like always forcing Van Damme to be on the run or jumping into a fight. And it does have a really nice overall look to it. I think this is shot by the dude who shot one of our favorite Stone Cold as well as Tremors.
Wait, it had the same cinematographer?
Yes, as as the Brian Bosworth film
So
Stone
awesome.
Cold. So
of course. What other one is there? Yes.
Masterpiece.
Yeah, and there's this is Toronto as New York, but like just the way that how much setting actually gets changed. Like he does fights inside burning law firms. He's in like these like neon purple glowing like crummy motels and strip clubs, and just the focus on like alleys and like the kinetic movements like through them and stuff like that. There's rooftops and balcony chases, nice little Dutch angles and kind of stuff.
There's a slaughterhouse
throughout.
Eventually, like randomly.
Of course, yes, and it does just have some decent like gangster. It has a kind of a serious tone to it, which I think was one of the most surprising things about it at this point in Van Damme's career, because he was like next up for him was Double Team. And if you tried to double feature this with Double Team, you would be like, these are two different action stars entirely. Like this is like pretty brutally violent and kind of low key on like a dramatic level, even though it does have some pretty bombastic action to it.
Yeah, Van Damme is definitely not his like confident, charming self in this film. He feels like very vulnerable. He's on the run constantly. He's just barely surviving every fight that he's in, and I kind of like that about how they portray him in this. Usually he has this hyper competency, but Van Damme's also one of those actors that is like in his films, he'll take hits all the time on like someone like Seagal, who's just never, no one ever touches him. He gets roughed up in these scenes too, and I like that. But I feel like that's even more apparent in this. Like he gets pretty fucked up in this.
Yeah, I also like that it starts with your kind of traditional Van Damme character. At least what you would think is like it starts with an action sequence essentially where he's being chased down the streets. And then it turns like after he goes through that and then that character dies, then we turn into Alain Moreau, where he's that less confident, he's kind of a character that's discovering things. So he's always in places that he's not used to, and he's talking to people that, he's investigating and all of that. So it is kind of cool to watch that switch. And then it is also interesting to watch him play that character while he's trying to play his brother, because there are certain scenes that we'll get to where he's, disguised as his brother, and he has to try to act as him. They don't utilize it a lot, but it is in there.
And you don't really have.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
You don't really have any reference points for what his brother was like, other than during that chase sequence where he gets killed.
Yeah.
I just had to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
You really. But I do really love that opening of the the bird's eye view shots of Nice that eventually drop into the alleys in the middle of the chase, and you just have like Jean-Claude, wide-eyed, leather jacket, goons coming after him. He's leaping from balconies like Jason Bourne style, which is kind of like some of the stuff that this reminds me of a little bit, and getting into like the car chase on multiple terrains from like the inside and the outside of the vehicles, doing these really pretty dangerous looking high speed maneuvers, like crashing downstairs and tight alleys, like not too dissimilar from something like Frankenheimer's like Ronin with like the big France chase scene in that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they also have some really cool, Ringo does a lot of awesome camera placement where he puts he'll put a camera and stabilize it on the side of a cart of vegetables while the cart is going down the street looking at the car that's chasing them. There's some like POV windshield shots that are really cool going down the alleyway. It's very impactful. He's great, a great action director.
Yeah, I think there's one scene where he's like tossed from one car to like another off the windshield. I mean, obviously it was probably a stunt double.
Yeah. Because that was an interesting part too when you watch that. Not knowing what's going to happen. Obviously, it's like you're just watching Van Damme. So then when he flies off the like little ramp when the cars separate and they both crash, and he just flies into that windshield at full speed. I was really shocked.
Just dies in the windshield. Yeah.
Like, wow. That was a really hard hitting, just very blunt death that they gave Van Damme right there. So I wasn't, and I was kind of set up that this was another twin movie. So I thought that those were that stuff was going to be actively in the film. And so when he just like blatantly dies in front of you, that was kind of shocking. So.
He should have landed on like the hood of this car, and it should have been like the other Van Damme twin in the car, being like, "Oh,
like who the hell is this guy?"
What?
That's how he discovers it. Discovers his long lost brother.
That's how I would have wrote it.
It's like Stuart Gordon stuck. He just gets like a Van Damme stuck in his windshield and starts driving around.
That sounds awesome. Oh my god!
Watch that.
We're gonna take another pass at the script right now.
Yeah, let's remake this.
But no, the stunt work in particular really, really stands out in this film. Like, it's incredibly dangerous looking. It's done by this guy, Charles Pacerni, who's actually the dude who did stunts for Die Hard, Roadhouse, Last Boy Scout, True Lies. So you got a little bit of that. And the guy doing the car stunts is a guy who did a lot of the James Bond films, the Roger Moore Bond films, and some of the 80s Bond films as well. So you have like two veteran stunt guys working with Ringo Lam kind of to create these, pretty impressive little set pieces that then the more sort of like clean cut Van Damme, Alain, whose French partner Sebastian turns him on to this case where he thinks his men are like playing a trick on him when they show him the corpse, and they're like, "This is the corpse of like my buddy," and they're like, "No, he just looks exactly this isn't a joke, come on." And I do like that he's already at a funeral for like a different cop or something, and so they have to go get him from a funeral.
Right. That wasn't even his twins. You just kind of that's where your brain goes because you just saw him die in the previous scene.
Right.
That's why I was. Confusing. That's why I was so confused.
Yes. So then he's introduced to his twin brother via his corpse, and his twin brother is Mikhail Suvorov, who was given up at birth by his mother due to how poor she was, and she gives a little kind of speech to him where she, basically, admits that he did have a twin brother that she never told him about. And I do like that Van Damme is very nice in this movie about it. He's just like, "You know what, Mom? You survived. You made a home for me. You did what you had to do, and I don't blame you at all. But you should have told me."
I'm actually kind of shocked. Like it's cool. I understand. You did what you had to do. Even when he finds out like his twin brother was not such a good guy, he was like this like Russian gangster. He still doesn't blame him because he's just like, well, what choice did he have?
Yeah. It's that classic.
He was trying to come home. He was trying to leave the lifestyle,
I mean, you do find out later on there's, more to it than him just being a Russian gangster.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I do love the line that his partner gives him when he goes and tells Sebastian about it, and he's just Sebastian, the French guy. He's just like in his French accent. He's like, "Parents, they always lie to their children to prepare them for the way that they're going to be treated by their government."
Oh my God, that was a good line.
Yeah,
such a good line.
I wrote that one down too. And then later on too with all the FBI stuff, it's a decent line.
It totally fits into like the sort of like paranoid conspiracy thriller element where it does kind of become a little bit of like the identity thriller and murder mystery aspect where he does travel to the adoption lawyers and he starts pulling at the thread. He's like, "Who is this guy? Where did he come from? How did he end up dead on his way home to me?" And so he goes to the adoption lawyers, and before he even gets there, he's getting into like a staring contest with a large blonde Russian man in an elevator. And I love how Ringo.
Anytime you see a sketchy dude coming out of like a lift or a hallway out of someone's room, something bad just happened. Something's going down.
Yeah, but I love how he builds up to it too. Like he's really good at suspense. He's really good at like, oh, this is the scene where they just go to the lawyer's office, and it would in the early Van Damme movies where from a director who worked for Canon, it would literally just be like he showed up and they gave him the information. And in this, it's like no, there's like something is wrong the second they enter the building, and then before they even get in the door, they see the smoke protruding like under underneath the door frame. And he goes in, the place is on fire. The lawyer has been shot in the head and his brains are on his desk. And the whole place is like completely ablaze. Like there's just the light rays and the smoke and the gruesome pools of blood everywhere. Like it's just, and he gets into a pretty sweet fight with this guy who is very much like a Dolph Lundgren type in terms of physicality.
I almost thought it was Dolph for a minute, strangely enough. And then I'm like, well, no, he would have been an established action star at this point. But he looks exactly like him.
I'm really impressed with sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm really impressed with like how fast people got out of their apartments in this building, because they were just like, well, there's a fire. Everyone just starts running out of their apartments and they're like out of there. Like no one's grabbing any of their shit. It's like, it would have been like going for all my shit, man. I'd be grabbing my Blu-rays, my cat, all this stuff. I don't know, man.
It is a big blaze. I
think it was the addition of fire plus big blonde Russian man.
I guess there was a big blonde Russian guy fighting Van Damme.
Yeah, they just see like they're like, wow, Van Damme is being like hurled into the flames by this man. Like I don't know, maybe. He's being thrown out the windows and like hanging onto the edge of like a cracking window pane, which is a pretty cool stunt that Van Damme gets to do.
There's like a big apartment fire set piece in Replicant too, the other Ringo Lam JCVD joint.
Ringo Lam loves fire set pieces.
Fire,
yeah, he definitely does.
He all of his movies have fire in it. I was like City on Fire, Prison on Fire, School on Fire.
Of course, yes, yeah, literally in the title of many of his films.
Yeah. But Van Damme, after doing the set piece, he finds out through the papers that Mikhail Suvorov was adopted by a Russian family that immigrated to New York, where he became a big-time Little Odessa gangster. And so he assumes his identity, he steals his passport, he gets his plane ticket, and he heads to the Big Apple, where he is chatting up with quirky cabbies who also like wannabe novelists who are like praising Bret Easton Ellis to him. I was like, does Van Damme know what this guy's talking about?
What was with he had all these crazy articles in his cab too. Like I don't know if
I was trying to figure that out actually. I was like, this is just a
conspiracy QAnon guy or what? Like
I guess it was like, because after he started just talking about wanting to be a writer, I assumed that those were all just like inspirational real stories that he was going to take for his crime novels or something like that. I wasn't totally sure, but he's kind of an eccentric and fun character, even though he's kind of random a little bit.
Van Damme.
Yeah, he exists for Van Damme to mourn him.
Yeah. Right.
Van Damme at one point is just like, oh, please just stop talking and help me find this guy. Like, it's just like, this is obviously the perfect guy to help you find someone, because he will just obsess over every detail, losing his mind and spiraling out of control and obsessing over it. So. Yeah, they're a good pairing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and he also finds like a nice old man who used to know Mikhail from his time on the streets, and there's a great shot of like Van Damme reflected in that man's glasses at one point. There's lots of nice little kind of like little visual details kind of peppered throughout this. But then he's basically trying to trace Mikhail's footsteps, and he runs into a woman at the club named Alex, played by Natasha Henstridge, who gives him this like Fleabag motel key, and he also in the alley runs into a gangster named Yuri, who works for a gangster named Ivan, who works for a gangster named Dmitri. I was trying to. There's a established hierarchy, and Van Damme kind of meets them one at a time.
Yeah.
Alex is kind of like, "What are you doing here? Blah blah blah. I can't believe you showed up." Everyone's
meanwhile, he's outside like getting stabbed and like breaking dudes' arms and like throwing their heads through windshields. There is a great moment where he spin kicks and sweep kicks a goon's legs while he's standing on the hood of a car, which actually matches a stunt that he does later where he's standing on the hood of a car, which gets smashed into and makes him just fall onto the other car.
Oh, yeah.
He sweep kicks a dude on the hood of a car, I think, in Hard Target as well. Classic Van Damme move.
He loves that move.
You're standing on a hood of a car and JCVD is on the ground, like you're getting sweep kicked. You're just setting yourself up for that sweep kick.
I would just watch out. I wouldn't put myself in that position personally. But he also does get to do the classic girlfriend mix up from Double Impact, where where Mikhail's girlfriend is really into him, and he takes just a little bit too long to tell her otherwise.
There's so many chances where he has the opportunity, but he keeps doing that thing where it's like, I'm about to talk, and then I guess I just can't. Keeps getting pushed into the back. Like there's even a moment right before she pushes him out the door where there's like a 5-second just of emptiness, no dialogue, where she's pushing him out the door, and I'm like, that's it. That's where you tell her. Okay, I guess not.
Yeah, but it leads into one of the first like kind of big set pieces of the film where she's kind of like trying to kiss him and talk dirty to him in the motel, even though, you know, he knows that he and by extension her are kind of being hunted by these Russian gangsters trying to kill his brother because they think that he's his brother. And I do love in the motel room just the design, like the purple neon glow of it and like all the shots of their eyes looking through the peepholes watching the gangsters. And Ivan, the one gangster, is played by Zach Grenier from Fight Club and Zodiac. And he's coming through, and it triggers like what is a classic Ringo Lam multi-location chase set piece, where it starts as like a rooftop chase with the electric guitars wailing. They fall down into the strip club where a gunfight ensues. And again, they're saying this is New York, and I just love that you can see all the Club Zanzibar signs everywhere.
Oh my God. I wonder if they shot it in there. I've not actually,
they did, dude.
I've not actually been to Club Zanzibar, sadly. We should all
no,
go there.
that's the thing is Brandon and I, we are Toronto boys, but you know, it's a little slimy. It's a little slimy. Even just the reputation of Club Zanzibar, it is known as like one of the more like low rent strip clubs, even in Toronto. So, but it's very funny that, you know, just to get Van Damme getting shot at while the neon Zanzibar sign is taking bullet shots while he's running past it.
Honestly, this strip club kind of reminded me of the one from Sopranos. Is it called the not the Titty Twister, but Bada Bing?
Yes,
Titty Twister is the one in From Dusk Till Dawn, I think. Bada Bing's the one in Sopranos. But I don't know, just the way like how slow like the dances are all moving, and it's.
Yeah, but they go from the roof into the strip club into a Yonge Street car chase where the blonde Russian dude is firing Uzis at their cab while they drive through people like on a sidewalk, like Larry Cohen style. Like I was like, that's an incredibly dangerous maneuver. All these pedestrians trying to get out of the way while they're driving the cab on the sidewalk.
Crazy how many movies have done like this classic, just like car chase down Yonge Street, mayhem on the sidewalk, like shots. Like I can, like, you know, Incredible Hulk, they had that with the one with Edward Norton.
Yes.
What's the other movie that...
Yeah, I love that you can always, in both of these films, you can see that and the Hulk movie, you can see the future shops in the background. Sorry, this is kind of like a Canadian reference-heavy episode, so apologies to all the like non-Canadians who are... We're obsessing over Van Damme shooting on our main street.
I mean, there's also that one shot of Funland Arcade, which was this really iconic arcade on Yonge Street, just north of Dundas. I used to hang out there like all the time, just playing Tekken.
Oh, dude! Someone mentioned this to me the other day too, because they brought up the Incredible Hulk thing. The Incredible Hulk also has Big Slice in it when it used to be on Yonge Street.
Big Slice. To go there.
Wonderful. The only time I ever saw them shoot something on Yonge Street was when they were shooting Suicide Squad. I was walking home from school and I literally saw the purple Lamborghini with Batman riding on top of it literally fly by me, and I was kind of like, oh, I guess Batman is in town.
Pretty sweet to see.
Pat Fleck was in town that day.
Yep, and so Jean-Claude, he had his own experience doing this in this set piece, and it is a pretty like intensely shot little set piece with lots of really quick cutting and sort of camera maneuvering that they're doing, and it does result eventually in the cabbie unfortunately getting killed and really taking things to that personal level, because this is the thing, is they are kind of straining beyond the mystery with the brother to make this kind of like on an immediate drama level, like what is Van Damme's, you know, other, like what else is he doing? They're like, well, he mourns this personality of the city, and then also he starts getting into a relationship with the girlfriend, and like that's kind of all that they could kind of come up with for him. Because they really want to focus on this mystery where he's like heading to Mikhail's house, where it's been presumably torn apart by the Russians or the FBI trying to cover up their collusion with one another. And there's this whole thing about like he has some sort of evidence that proves it, that he kept in the bank in Nice, which is what they were trying to hunt after him for. And he's figuring all this out by just like walking through his nice steely house in all these like Dutch angles and tracking shots through it, where both the Russians and agents eventually arrive, and Van Damme has to fight them both.
Yeah. He says something quite mournful to the cabbie after he realizes he's been shot, and he was just like, "You were supposed to go home and write." Oh.
Yeah. And then they even do
the right to a novel.
They even do a reference where the guy, he's like, "That's great, an unexpected development." the whole thing's so scary, and then he dies. But just to include the line "unexpected development," like the story is progressing, I thought was kind of oddly funny for the tone that it's taking.
Yeah.
Yes, but the fights that he gets into in the house are again, they're not like particularly focused on sort of like long martial arts fights. It's more like he just like approaches a Russian goon and just like breaks his arm, or, he smashes an agent's face in with their own guns or something like that. Or the one dude he just beats up with a mirror and then gets like that momentary moment where he's looking into the broken mirror and it's like a who am I moment.
Right. What have I become? I'm such a monster
in the
now.
broken reflection. He's like, am I my vicious Russian gangster brother? Who am I becoming?
He probably has that moment every time he looks into a mirror in real life.
Yeah. But it does lead to him going to and beating David Cronenberg to the Russian bathhouse fight from Eastern Promises in an amazing set piece where he goes to confront Kirov, who is the head Russian mobster, who is the one who's been commanding Ivan, and he finds out that this entire time that Ivan has been, as an underling, kind of going rogue, trying to kill Mikhail. And Kirov is basically like shocked to be like, oh my God, what the fuck? I told you to bring him in alive. So he shuns him, and it results in Ivan having to send the big blonde Russian in for a less dong heavy version of the fight from Eastern Promises, but no less sweaty. And even just seeing Van Damme just rock the towel in this fight do the spin kicks and jump kicks. They're beautiful.
There's one shot where he like leaps over a guy and does a spin kick or something. And it's just like, there's no way you would have not seen his balls in this shot.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, or just Ringo Lam's just that amazing of a director that he hid them somehow with the magic of camera work, but pretty wild.
Yeah, it is missing a little bit of hog, but it's still a really good action sequence.
He had really
and it's very violent, like the Kirov getting gutted with the knife. Oh. You watch that thing go in and watch it just like gush blood everywhere. It's just as you feel like he's got a footing, or he's made a friend with someone kind of high up who could finally start putting things right. And it's like, no, he's also going to be brutally murdered right in front of you, and you're also on another on the run set piece, by the way.
There's definitely like a nihilism to Ringo Lam's films for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, and even just like, because like there's very, it's a really solid sweaty fight between the two toweled up, martial artists, and you just get Kirov just getting executed in the background by Ivan, and also Van Damme getting clothed extremely fast as he goes as this,
he got dressed though. That was insane.
It's impressive, yeah. and it turns into a street chase shootout with cars narrowly missing him and gunfire being like shot into crowds of people, and doing this moment, which, by the way, I tweeted this scene out because I thought this action scene was so sick. Number one, because he leaps in front of an above ground subway car that almost hits him as he bunny hops from one track onto another track, and a goon actually replicates the stunts and follows him. And Van Damme gets to watch that guy get hit by the second subway train coming the other direction. It's a huge, amazing dummy hit that guy takes. Yeah. And then Van Damme falls between them and hangs on to the bottom of the tracks until he falls onto the streets below in a single shot, where then he's arrested by the NYPD. And I was sitting there going, this is the best Toronto for New York dress up I've ever seen, and I have since found out through the magic of tweeting the scene out and having so many people look into this is the 1 minute of the movie they shot in New York.
They actually did shoot a bit of footage in New York.
Yes, because they needed specifically that above ground, like the way that they choreographed it. They were like, we need the above ground subway going over the cars, because or else this whole part where, Jean-Claude goes up the stairs and leaps over and then falls down between the tracks, like none of that makes sense. But what's so funny is they still couldn't make that work in New York, so they shot it in New York and Philly. So New York is all the street level stuff, and the platform stuff is all Philadelphia, which actually does kind of look like what Toronto's, sort of outdoor subway portions kind of look like. But it's very, very sneaky in the shooting and the cutting, because Ringo Lam is just, he makes this all kind of look like one area, and it looks like a really intensely choreographed scene, especially considering he's cutting two different cities together.
Mm-hmm.
And just amazing. The dummy hit, the sparks flying. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it results in him being captured by the cops, and the FBI agents who have been hunting him down bail him out and kidnap the girlfriend Alex to coerce him into getting the evidence in the bank deposit back in France. So again, this movie just moves so much. I swear, he as soon as he finds out about the death, he's already fighting in an on-fire lawyer's office. He's stealing the plane ticket and going to New York. He's getting into the fights in the motels and Yonge Street. And then he's getting into the strip clubs, and he's getting into the subway platforms. Then he's being arrested and flown back to France. This moves at a really, really intense pace to it. And this final set piece that he gets to go through is insane.
I also love it whenever there's two guys on official business searching for Van Damme, across countries and different places, in Forrest Whitaker and that other dude in Bloodsport and these two guys in this movies. There's always you can't just look for Van Damme by yourself. You need somebody to help you with that.
Same thing with Lionheart, I believe, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He always has agents pursuing him as a B as a B plot, and they're always pursuing him for being way too damn cool, for going AWOL to help a woman or something. Yeah. Oh yeah, I also forgot about the brief bathroom sex scene while in the motel while the agents are listening to him. I forgot too that this is around the time that Van Damme was actually doing more Hollywood sex scenes, because we've watched the sex scene with Van Damme evolve, because in the early goings you never actually saw it, and you never saw the girl. You just saw his form. Away. You just saw his butt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. This was
more suggestive.
This was a good sex scene.
And this was more after Nowhere to Run era, he kind of switched to no, he's going to do more traditional sex scenes. You're still going to see his butt, and you're still going to it's still going to get the sweat going with him, but that's it.
Yeah.
Although I do find it funny that they include the detail that the agents are listening to them the entire time, which then turns into the scene where the agents are forcing them to go into the bank, but bank policy dictates that he can only go into the vault room on his own to go in, and he gets the money, he gets the evidence, he gets a gun, where we get the backstory that he turns out he's an expert marksman war veteran. Then the brother left him a gun specifically to be this is for you to take care of business, by the way. And he's listening to the tape recording that the brother left him, which is probably the closest this gets to a piece of real dramatic acting for Van Damme, having to listen to his brother tell him that, the mob is this incredibly poisonous thing that was destroying my life, and I wanted to quit and come back to you and come back to my family. And, watching Van Damme's face while he's listening to Van Damme on the tape is probably the closest this gets to giving him a real piece of melodrama. And it's quite good. Van Damme at this point in his career, he started to nail the teary-eyed stare into the distance a little bit.
Yeah, he's got them welling up as he's saying I hope we're listening to this tape together, stuff like that. It's pretty good.
I definitely felt the drama in this scene. I know this is supposed to be a little bit more of a dramatic role for him. The movie presents it that way, but he does feel a little dry and stiff in this. I just feel he hasn't had the weight of having gone through his career and sort of taking this nosedive and then kind of coming back with the JCVD movie that sort of rejuvenated his career and consideration as a bona fide actor. It's not quite there yet, but there is something he feels more of a cipher in this film, where you're sort of learning more about his brother than you are about him. But
yeah,
that's true for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I do he's either we are reunited like we should have always been, or I am dead and you should trust no one. And so he immediately is I guess the latter happened. So and he finds out that the documents are in there as evidence of the collusion. So he's immediately hey, banker, take these to the American embassy, and I'm going to take the gun. And, and the money is for you and our mother. And, so he knows what he has to do, which is he asks the banker in France for a cigarette. He's like, "Sir, can I have a cigarette? This is France."
Of course, yeah.
And the guy gives it to him, which he uses to trigger the sprinklers as he's trying to make his way out of the bank. And Ivan, having kind of predicted that something was going wrong, sends the blonde Russian henchman in, who kills the banker before he can even take that evidence to the embassy, triggering one of the better fights in the film, which is a grappling fight inside the elevator.
I really appreciated like mixed martial arts in this. Like, you don't see JCVD doing much grappling in his films. Like, they definitely were sort of expanding on his wheelhouse of moves in this. I think.
Yeah, he's using a lot more submissions and that kind of thing. You still got, obviously, you got to have a couple classic kicks in there, but for the most part, it is a lot more submission based. And I like the details here too, because they're in a confined space, so he can't really do what he usually does. But he still has these really cool moments, like the sliding of the knife on the floor into his foot, for instance, where it shows like
that's so great.
It's amazing.
That was a
and
very
it's how
nice
he gets
touch.
out of the chokehold and everything too. So it's like it's intelligent and he's still able to, I guess, use his feet a little bit just in that coordination.
And just horrible, because the idea that he
he
kicked the knife out of his hand, the knife lands on the elevator floor, and while he's being like strangled to death, he works the knife using his feet so that he can direct it towards the dude's toes, and he literally reverse kicks it into his toes. And I was sitting there going, "Oh God, I would just hate to be that guy."
And there was like a little bit of like a saxophone like flourish when that happens too.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
And there's even a little comedic beat when briefly they stop at one of the floors and passengers try to get in, and the Russian guy is like, "Get the fuck out of here!"
Yeah, he's like, "Get the fuck out."
And then this set piece makes its way outside, where Ivan has taken his partner Sebastian, his French partner, hostage, and is basically just mowing down French cops outside with an Uzi, and it's getting a little crazy. He's driving a big van out in the bank parking lot, basically. And there's a sick part where Jean-Claude just cocks his gun in slow-mo, and the audio drops entirely except for like this sick like wailing twang hits in. And Van Damme just aims down sight as the camera racks focus to the barrel, basically doing this like bullet time point of view shot as he headshots the dude driving Ivan's van. And you get the classic Ringo Lamb aftermath image of that dude's like eye being shot out of his head, basically.
It's so kinetic too. Like all the steps, like the storyboard, I guess, of it all is amazing. Like just the close up of the barrel, the gunfire, the breaking of the windshield right into the headshot. Like it feels so kinetic.
And the way they set up his relationship to the gun, where they're like, "You're a veteran marksman, and we need you to go back to the old you right now." You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's brutal. And the shot too of, like you were saying, with the actual headshot itself is like the guy's, his head has been kind of blown back a little bit, and like it's just dripping out of his forehead. It is very graphic. It's wild.
Yeah. And it's followed by him like shooting out the tires on Ivan's van, flipping it and exploding the car after like narrowly getting Sebastian out of it. And I was sitting there going, wow, we've had like the henchman fight. We've had the Ivan car chase. We've had him headshotting dudes. What's left? And I completely forgot about the FBI agents.
Yeah. And what's
I was like, oh, there's still a whole nother like multi-tier set piece left in this film.
Yeah.
One of these FBI agents, the bald guy, he had a little bit of a head bump, right? Was it Paul Van Victor, Agent Pellman?
Yes.
He's got a bit of a head bump. I wonder if like him and Van Damme bonded over their like head bumps at all. He's like, okay, let's get this guy, or
right, the little goosebumps on their forehead. Yeah. I was always curious about that, actually, and I never asked. Is that just a natural thing that Van Damme has, or is that like a fighting injury or something like that?
I think it's...
Never looked into it.
That's a good question.
Yeah. I've always been curious. I'll just wiki it tonight, maybe. But
we're going to have to pose it once again to the listeners.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Anyone knows.
Did you personally give Jean-Claude a goose egg? If you know that story, let us know. Yes, but yeah, he has to chase down these FBI agents because they still have the girlfriend Alex, and there is that great stunt where he jumps on the hood just in time for them to crash into it, knocking him off, and you do get a repeat of this sort of like Nice car chase from the opening where he's now taken his brother's role, and it does feel like he is like meant to getting a do-over, but he's going to take these guys down.
Yeah, they do like very similar styles where they're ramming into each other. They're kind of just barely
the sparks flying, tight squeeze through the alley shots that they're doing.
They even do a split up where in the first scene, it's where Van Damme, or the first Van Damme, dies, where they kind of split off and go off ramps, but this time they both survive. Like I think the feds go over some water and then land on a dock.
They go through like the dock markets briefly.
Yeah. So it is cool to see that reflection in this scene.
I do like that they also include one detail in here, which I have to assume is partially Van Damme's thing, where Van Damme likes to stop a set piece sometimes and like improvise a moment where he's like nice to somebody because he's a good guy. He's not the bad guy. You have to know that a little bit, even if he's like going back to the old violent him and headshotting people. You got to know that and there is the part in this where he apologizes to the guy for stealing his car. He's like, he's like, I'm taking this. He's like, I'm sorry, but I'm taking it. And it reminds me of that part in Double Team where he asks those guys if they have parachutes before kicking them out of like the airplane. That they're doing like the prison escape cliffhanger stunt and he literally before like these are like dudes who run this like international agent conspiracy prison. And he's just like, do you guys have parachutes, by the way, before I throw you out of this plane? There you go. Or kick them out, of course. Yeah, he's a considerate guy. And this chase leads to them driving into a meat freezer with pig carcasses everywhere.
Yeah, and this is after they like go through an explosion of mopeds and then through the wall into the slaughterhouse. Yeah, it's wild.
Just crazy stunt work being done, just overall. And it results in a eventual gunfight, which is there's a part where he's like shooting the pig carcass hooks off so that he can then shoot the one guy, and then also getting into a chainsaw fight with the other FBI agent.
Randomly, out of nowhere, that guy grabs a chainsaw. I was so excited.
It just starts straying into the...
Yeah, what was that action movie we watched just like, it was last year sometime where they fight with chainsaws at the end? I think it's a Hong Kong movie too.
Oh, Tiger. Yeah, it was the one that I had all of you watch in our virtual group watch where we did Lau Kar Lung's Tiger on the Beach with Chow Yun Fat.
So sick. So yeah, I was
which
very
ends
excited
on a
to see
chainsaw on chainsaw like martial arts fight. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited to see another chainsaw in one of these martial art finales, even though it's not utilized by any means to the same degree, but it's still just so awesome.
Well, that's what differentiates once again
right?
Ringo.
Isn't it at this point? Well, so and just for that kind of character too, to be wielding a chainsaw at the end of something like this, at the end of this like political
it's very
conspiracy.
Silly. Well, and that's it. That's what Ringo Lam is so interesting at, because like he definitely worked in a very similar industry as these guys like Lau Kar Lung and John Woo, who would take that and milk it for like full cartoon pageantry of it. And Ringo Lam will take those same silly gestures, but he will then do them in like this more like gruesome kind of serious tone where like, it's just an FBI agent wielding a chainsaw and Van Damme is fighting him. It turns into this thing where Van Damme does do something amazing where he grabs a meat hook, he attaches his feet to it and slides across it upside down so that he can grab a pistol from the ground that fell during the fight and shoot the agent in the dick who's wielding the chainsaw trying to slice him in half. And the dude doesn't just like get shot in the dick and fall down. He like very slowly falls in a way where the chainsaw cuts the entire frozen pig in half. And you watch him fall for like 15 seconds before he dies. I don't even think that he kills him, actually. I think he just like, he intentionally shoots the one FBI agent in the arm and the other one in the dick. So that he doesn't kill them, I guess.
Yeah, did he not die? Oh, damn.
I think they're still squirming, and we don't go back to them.
Yeah, yeah, they move on pretty quickly.
Their fate is undetermined.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah, when I saw that hook move, I thought that was really, really creative and very awesome.
Yeah, very, very good.
Pretty much where my notes end on this.
Yeah, I mean, they have like one little epilogue that I thought was kind of, is a little silly to kind of include, where it's just like they find out, it's like, oh, he's got the money and he's rich now, he doesn't have to work anymore, and the evidence that he found got all the other remaining bad guys arrested, and also he's introducing the girlfriend to his mom, and everything gets wrapped up all nice.
Things worked out for him.
They had to have that like sweet, very sentimental Jean-Claude Van Damme moment too. He's like, she's like, what are you going to tell her? And she's like, well, I'll just say she's just like his brother. Nice, kind, compassionate, empathetic. Then they just walk off in love.
I wonder if she's even going to tell her parents like that it's a different, like the brother, or if she's just going to be like, yeah, this is the guy I've been dating this whole time.
Yeah, it would be. It would be kind of a weird conveation to be like, no, we are dating, but it's his brother. It's his brother. It's his identical brother.
Love to sit in that conversation.
Yes.
Good stuff.
But yeah, that pivoting, I think, towards the reductive rating round, which for you, Brandon, is where we remove all the words and all the nuance and reduce the movie to a number between 1 and 5. But it's also become kind of like final statements or, kind of any scenes or lines we might not have hit while we were talking about it. And for me, I'm going to stick, I think, with the very, very high 3, and it is a very high 3. Like, this was kind of, like, I slept on this one, and I was like, this might be kind of like the low 4 for me, because it is very, very solidly directed, and some of the complaints we've had over the course of Van Damme's early stuff was that, he's so athletic and so skilled, and he just wasn't, matched with a director who was putting in the same level of effort that he was. And in this case, I think absolutely he was, even though the script, is just as generic as, some of the other American action films that he was doing kind of early on. But I will say, like, it's cool to see Van Damme do the international identity sort of like gangster conspiracy thriller, like almost Bourne or Ronin were things that I was thinking of early on, and then, done and bring a new Hong Kong director to American audiences in Ringo Lam. This was his American debut. And I just do think that, unfortunately, for all the bombastic action, it is surprisingly light on the heroic bloodshed melodrama, which is kind of what I was hoping a little bit more of. So comparing to earlier Van Dammes, I do think that this is better than those. But comparing to other Ringo Lambs, I'm kind of like, I think the American script leaves him a little lacking by Larry Ferguson. It's more concerned about like keeping the various generic plot threads about the FBI and the Russians kind of going. And I was expecting this being a twin movie. I was like, I kind of expected more of the twin stuff. It's so deadly serious and lacking some of those like Jean-Claude isms that were fun about when he co-wrote his movies, like cucking himself in the fantasy or drunkenly beating the shit out of himself or monologuing about America, or there's some stuff in story-wise. It's a little flavorless and impersonal in a way that even the stuff that he co-wrote wasn't. It could have just used something that was like as intense or filled with heartache as, for example, that moment where Chow Yun-Fat is like begging Danny Lee to kill him in the finale of like City on Fire. I was man, Jesus imagine Christ. Van Damme doing that scene, but with like another Van Damme. Yeah. It was his brother or something. I would have cried. I would have been like, this is the best movie I've ever seen.
Or even like him discovering maybe what his brother was like by actually acting as him in more scenes as well, like
putting on more of like a performance,
so
like milking that for like the suspense more,
and he discovers himself along the way as he discovers who his brother was and all that. But there's there's small moments of it, but it's just it is really heavily focused, you're right, on like the FBI stuff and more of the logistical plotting, I guess.
Yeah, and it doesn't have enough like personality for those characters, in my opinion, if that's what it kind of like wants to do. But otherwise, like Van Damme is, this is relatively kind of low key and normal performance they ask of him. He does okay with it. Yeah. I do like the run and gun nature of the way that Ringo Lam directs it, like the entire look of it, the insanely dangerous looking stunts, the crazy, sort of like wild Dutch angles and like punchy tracking maneuvers he'll suddenly do. And the fistfights and gunfights are very gruesome and like well done. So, despite the fact that Lam doesn't have like a ton to work with, it's all very kinetically assembled, and it just sprints from set piece to set piece, and and it's bookended by two very solid car chases in France. There's a sweaty, gnarly bathhouse fight in the middle of it. He's doing one of the scariest subway leap stunts that I've ever seen. So yeah, so comparing this to his non-Hong Kong directed stuff, the action is a massive upgrade. So very, very high 3 for me still.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think the action is fantastic under the eye of Ringo Lam. He's just so good. He's so bombastic but so coherent, and I love when I watch a Ringo Lam movie just because I know the action is going to be fantastic. Van Damme, I think, is doing an okay job here with the dramatics, but he doesn't have a lot to chew on, and I almost want him to have more. I do think that if he dove into like the connection with his brother a little more, maybe, like I said before, having more scenes where he is even acting like him throughout different scenarios might have been something they could have done. But yeah, I do love the action though. Every single sequence in this is fantastic and just so high energy, and it's really good stuff. I definitely have seen better from Ringo Lam, so it is in the high 3 territory for me. I don't have much to add, so high 3.
Sweet. For you, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to just rate everything either 3.5 or 4, which is stupid, but I'm going to probably give this a high 3 as well. I think the fact that there wasn't enough personality to go between not just one Van Damme, but 2 Van Damme brothers, that feels like a missed opportunity. They could have easily added in a flashback sequence or 2 with Natasha Henstrich's character and the dead Van Damme brother, just to sort of, maybe give you a little bit of like personality or kind of like some kind of memory. Would have added a little bit more character and drama. In terms of like the heroic bloodshed elements, I did feel some of those, but if they had really gone like full heroic bloodshed, I feel like the brother would have survived a little bit longer. At least gone through some things with Van Damme. I know we've already gotten that film with like Double Impact, but you could have had one of the brothers dying, like a shootout at the end or something like that. It would have been maybe it would have been a little more impactful, or
that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah,
just Van Damme like physically mourning another Van Damme there. Like that would have been pretty.
Just scream crying and wet and sweaty and
gets up and starts kicking everything and breaking it because he's just so passionate. Definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. The action was good. This definitely has Ringo Lam's mark all over it, and and Ringo Lam is also one of those Hong Kong directors that he's so like he definitely represents that golden era of Hong Kong action cinema, but he also is a bit of a maverick. Like his work stands out from his peers, like John Woo and Choi Hawk. Like there's a grittiness to it. It's a little bit it's not as graceful, but it's also precisely executed. There's a causality of everything just goes from point A to point B. That's very satisfying and economical, and so this is a 3, maybe a 3.5. Look out for my Letterboxd review later to see which one I actually land on. But
hell yeah, no, same for us. But yeah, that will wrap it up for Maximum Risk. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about Knockoff. So stick around, and definitely fucking stick around. This is insane.
You lied to me!
Send the detonation signal. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road.
Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road? You better buy some new CDs, Harry. It's pathetic.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. Knockoff.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Knockoff, the 1998 American and Hong Kong espionage action thriller film directed by Choi Hawk and starring, once again, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And this is an interesting point in his career, because as we mentioned, this might be the last theatrical release that he got, because before this, he brought he did 2 collaborations with Choi Hawk. We covered one of them, which you can find on an old episode with Hard Target. We talked about Double Team, because that was him bringing Choi Hawk over to the US, and we've covered Choi Hawk actually quite a few times with Once Upon a Time in China and his fantasy masterpiece Green Snake, which we've covered on the show as well. One of my favorite movies.
I don't know if I've seen Green Snake.
Oh, it's so
Green
good.
Snake is amazing.
Check it out.
I feel like I've seen a lot of Choi Hawk movies, but every time I look at his filmography, there's always just like, oh shoot, I haven't seen the Butterfly Murders or
Yes. No, that he has one of those careers, and he's really exemplified even in Hong Kong for just like how, wild his films were able to get, like, because he was a major producer, and he actually produced so much and had major falling outs with most of the Hong Kong filmmakers that we know and love.
Well, even him and John Woo, I think they had a falling out over A Better Tomorrow 2 or 3, or somewhere between those sequels. John Woo definitely did.
Yeah, he ended up taking over, I think, for the third one, and I think the falling out might have happened on the second one.
Yeah, I don't think John Woo wanted to do that sequel at all.
No, but he was also like just one of, like, it's so interesting because like Choi Hak, you have on one hand he's kind of known as like one of the more sort of like ruthless business oriented producers, but also probably the most stylistically experimental of all of the same guys who can.
A lot of risks.
Well, and those are just two qualities you don't usually see in the same person.
For sure, yeah. That's a good point.
and which makes him like incredibly unique. So when Van Damme brought him over for Double Team and Knockoff, they were basically ended up being his only American films because they were critical and financial disasters, in part because unlike Lamb, who in Maximum Risk, I think, not necessarily downplayed the Hong Kong influence, but kind of his style fit into a gruesome run and gun style American action film. Whereas like Choi Hak, he kind of, Green Snake is almost a cartoon. Yeah. And so like when you get to things like Double Team, it's insanely energetic, beautiful colors, insane angles, and like transitions and hyperactivity that you just creates this very weird tone. And it's like a goofy sci-fi Mission Impossible / Bond / Face Off, and it's not as clean or elegant as Woo, and just a lot more oddball, but it's really stayed with me as a result. And I wish I had a chance to rewatch it because I think we high threed that when we covered it with Will Menaker. But going back, I do wonder watching Knockoff if I'm just like more on the wavelength of it now and would be more into Dennis Rodman making basketball puns about like, offense wins games, but defense wins championships, while he's like in his like cool gender fluid costumes and like doing the rapping nursery rhymes or whatever that he's doing. And
giant there's an entire Mickey Rourke in the middle of like a coliseum.
Where he set up landmines and a tiger with his baby, his newly born baby from his kidnapped pregnant wife in the middle of the Coliseum.
Yeah, this might be a 4. That might have been a 4.
And the Sammo Hung choreographed action, like a dude who kicks his shoes off at Van Damme and then wields a switchblade in his toes. Like going into Knockoff, I kind of knew what to expect from him a little bit more this time around, where he has Van Damme playing a dude named Marcus Ray, a sales representative for V6 Jeans, alongside his partner Tommy Hendricks, played by Rob Schneider, which has to be one of the most oddball buddy pairings in action movie history.
It really works, though.
And
it really works.
It does. They have surprising amounts of like bozo like chemistry with one another, especially because Van Damme, like, huge credit to him, because I think at this point in his career, and just looking at it, he looks a little weary and sweaty. I think he is at the point, like at the peak of his cocaine addiction while he was making this movie.
I had a feeling you were working towards that point.
Yeah, sure. like he honestly, there are moments in this movie where I was like, stop the cameras. He does look a little unwell. Like he looked like queuing Maximum Risk up, where you could argue he's maybe at the most handsome he's ever looked. And then with this, and you're kind of like, there's some flop sweat going on. He's a little troubled. He's a little not entirely all there.
I gotta say, he look like a jeans salesman, though. He's like a denim.
But he does. Well, that's just it. It's like no movie could have used it better because he's
necklace chains. Like, oh my god. I gotta wonder.
The energy is pure cocaine out of his character, so it does work really well if that is the case.
Spot on.
Yeah, the fake tan, the slick hair, the the suits, and like he's playing like this wealthy con man essentially.
He looks really spry in this. Like he's very spry. I don't know.
He is.
Like he's still fit. Like his face is really starting to go, but he's looking very spry and fit in this. Like when in that one stunt where he flies through that storefront window, I'm like, I actually believed he could have survived that. Just how flexible and fit he looked.
Oh yeah, this is honestly this action in this movie has some of his most like fast-paced movements that he's done. When he starts, and we'll get to it in detail, but like you know, the ending boat sequence and all of that, like he's just moving like I've really never seen him do before.
He is sliding around. Like
Yeah.
Greased up, sliding around.
I can't wait to get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
No, he's having a blast, and I will say part of the reason that I think I got a little bit more out of this than Maximum Risk is because this is just as plot heavy, but the plot is nonsense, and it is just like they are getting so busted dumb. For selling knockoff jeans as part of this company, and as a result, they find out that there is a sort of like an American contact representative, Karen Lee, played by Lila Roshan, who was actually also an extra with Jean-Claude on the Canon breakdance musical Breakin', which I thought was sort of interesting.
That is a nice tidbit.
Yes, and she and I don't even know how to say it other than almost there are 3 different they're a CIA agent reveals.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then the CIA agents are also conspiring with the bad guys, and there's reveals on top of those reveals. And at a certain point, I just lost track of what was happening.
Yeah, I literally, I have my notes. I'm like, oh, is Michael Wong a bad guy? Wait, is Paul Sorvino the bad guy? What is going on?
Yeah. It does get a little tiresome in a sense, but I think because everything else is so just kind of strange and it is bombastic, the way that characters act, it kind of feels like it works with the movie.
It did for me confused. Hugely.
Yeah. The only thing that I wasn't confused about was like the obvious double agent that Harry would become, which is like the leader of the CIA and all of that. He just seemed like the obvious
Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas, man. He kind of gives off a little bit of bad vibes, even as the good CIA agent.
He's got, he's just so sure of himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a very the main way I kind of went into this, and I had to go into this about halfway through the movie because I was watching it and I was kind of unsure what I was watching actually for about half. It's my first time watching it.
Yeah,
and.
What the movie does to you.
About halfway through, I feel like I kind of picked up on what was happening, which was one, you just have what to me is a genuinely magical collaboration between 3 different types of people working here. You have a once-in-a-generation screen athlete going for broke in Jean-Claude Van Damme. You have a veteran American action screenwriter in Stephen E. D'Souza, who obviously wrote Street Fighter. I think he might have even directed Street Fighter for Van Damme, which isn't his finest hour, but he's more known for writing the first 2 Die Hard films, as well as Commando and Running Man and 48 Hours. So like this guy knows his excessive 80s action film, and I think by 1998 this script almost like Sudden Death to me like played as like self-conscious, I don't even want to say parody, but like it knows how ridiculous it is, and he is just kind of playing the generic hits of what like an American kind of conspiratorial action film would be, and leaning into the ridiculous elements.
Almost like a knockoff of those types of films.
Oh, one of the first of many. I think Brandon gets it.
And then, of course, you have world-class comedian Rob Schneider.
Yes, how could I forget world-class comedian SNL alumni Rob Schneider.
That was the third one you were talking about, right? The collaboration to make this a magical thing.
Oh, of course. Yes. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention any of the Hong Kong talent involved in the making of this film. Which, by the way, there are 3. We've already mentioned Choi Hak, incredible, oddball, eccentric, but really impressive action stylist. But then you also have Arthur Wong shooting this film, who shot a few Choi Hak films, but also shot a lot of Lau Kar-leung films, which I think actually does show a couple times in this film. He shot 36 Chamber of Shaolin. He shot
the guy that shot
Dirty Ho.
36 Chamber of Shaolin shot Knockoff?
Yes.
That's wild,
dude. What?
It is insane. It is legitimately insane. And then you also have Sammo Hung contributing second unit action choreography to the majority of these set pieces.
Apparently a lot of Sammo's action scenes were cut down. Because, I mean, this movie is like a lean 90 minutes. And I don't know.
Oh, dude, it hits credits at like 84 minutes or something. It's ridiculous. This was clearly like chopped to shit.
It's a shame there wasn't more extended action sequences. I mean, they're super fun, but like there's just a certain magic to seeing Van Damme working with choreographers or action directors. Like, because I mean, the guy is super talented, and you only usually see his 5 to 10 staple moves in his American films, but the Hong Kong people really push him. Like even as early as No Retreat, No Surrender, that fight that Corey Yun directed and choreographed that film, the fight between him and the guy at the end, Kurt, I can't remember his name, but you will see Van Damme moves. You will see Van Damme do moves in that ring that you will never see him do again in the rest of his career, and they're wild. It's always fun seeing him work with Hong Kong directors.
Oh yeah, no, and you do get to see that in this quite a bit, which I like because like Samo did second unit martial arts choreography and direction on the film, like he did a little bit on Double Team, and a lot of it was cut or trimmed by the studio apparently, like maybe as much as 20 or 30 minutes apparently.
Bread and butter,
but
I can't completely.
The results are, in my opinion, still like insane and like playfully chaotic. Like the cutting to me is like almost experimental, the way that it like moves between stuff. And I was blown away by the way that this looks and
through
moves.
objects. Like when they're releasing all those dolls in the water at the beginning, and the camera just zooms into this doll eye, and then all of a sudden you're like getting this like macro or micro vision of like all the circuits and stuff in there, or.
Yeah. Even a gesture like someone calling another character, the camera will go into the parts of microscopic footage of the phone and then change locations to the phone that's being called.
Yeah, it was like Black Hat. It's kind of cool to see.
Yes, straight up.
Yeah,
a lot
Michael
of
Mann saw knockoff, baby.
A lot of late '90s
that's right.
Hong Kong cinema had like outrageous CG like this. They were just trying a lot of different things. I feel like I don't know, but then you've got the shots where it's like going through. A television or a computer monitor, and I feel like they do, like David Fincher does that kind of stuff a little bit differently, maybe.
Oh yeah,
some of my favorite
this is
things.
like Choi Hawk doing digital experimentation 100%, while also throwing in this like old-fashioned Hong Kong craft. And it's like you have like the action style, the stunt choreography, the pageantry, it's all there, but it's so formally unhinged and like ridiculously over the top and violent that it does get abstracted into like these like wacky scenarios that lend themselves both, in my opinion, to the two different sides of this film that you have, which is one, the conspiratorial mania of, Rob Schneider and Van Damme playing these like stressed out bozo con men who find themselves in a CIA conspiracy about like their cheap overseas manufacturing of shitty jeans, basically turning into like a cyberpunk plot where the villains are putting Soviet nanobombs into the studs to send them to America to kill American children. Like it's an insane plot on that level, which the mania of the filmmaking suits. But then you also, as Brandon kind of put it, the entire project also does feel like this like weird meta satirical like admission almost by Choi Hawk, and like almost like he's doing like a poison pen experience of what it was like being a Hong Kong artist, bringing his own talent and goods to the West, and being like I participated in a business of cheap explosive tricks and like watered down my style into like a fireworks show of, fakery and commercials essentially for Americans who just love their jeans and their toys and,
Which is why
has a really amazing quality to it.
Van Damme opening up in a sports car, singing along, and just being the most like
to Canto Pop.
Wacky.
I love that
awesome.
he's like singing along to Canto Pop, driving on the highway. Like the classic like Hong Kong character introduction, like super happy-go-lucky. Complete contrast to how he's portrayed in Maximum Risk. Like he's just super fun, so easygoing. Like he pulls up into that. I don't know, the factory or warehouse, and the guy's like, "Hey, nice wheels, man." And he's like, "Hey, ticket for a spin." He gives him his fucking. He's like, "Wow, he's not a care in the world,"
Just a good dude.
Well, and I also love that Rob Schneider is introduced like berating all of the models over their underwear, and like Van Damme goes to the warehouse, and everyone at the warehouse just loves him. They're like, "We love when you show up. You're the coolest guy ever." And again, we're being introduced to more formal tricks in there where like, again, there's parts where it's like going into the phone in the network when they're connecting, but there's also a part that never comes up again that blew my mind where Van Damme reaches into a box of knockoff watches in the warehouse, and a screen within a screen pops up to just show the shot of his hand picking up the watch for like 2 seconds
just so
to
they
show
don't
like
have to
his
cut
vision
away
of
from
it.
the wide. It's awesome.
Yeah.
There's some really crazy like cross dissolve, slow motion, like frame drops,
speed printing,
motion trails and Man, they were doing some wild experimental stuff on this.
Yeah, there's some great technique where like people will make sudden realizations in a small space, and then everything just goes into slow motion for a second while they're making that realization. There's some great moments where, like during fights, everything is really expressive and almost overpowered in this. So whenever somebody gets shot, like they are sent flying back, or if they get punched, even with a single punch, they kind of slide across the floor. Like there's a one shot that's great where someone gets punched in the chest or something like that, and they cut, instead of the reaction from the upper torso, they just cut to a shot of one of their feet sliding across the carpet as if like that force slid them across the room.
That's like staple Hong Kong stunt move. They just tie a wire around the actor or the stuntman, and then as he hits the ground, they yank
pull.
Yeah. It's great. It's just so expressive and over the top, and I love every minute of it. And it's like the film is full of that. Every single sequence has something.
Oh yeah, do you know one of my favorites was, and I'm curious if either of you guys clocked it, because it's so fast that I actually had to pause it and skip frame by frame to make sure that I saw what I saw. And it's in that opening bit with the Russian scuba diving agents who are trying to like steal some sort of container filled with dolls that have explosive microchips in them. Like it's batshit right off the opening image.
Yeah,
and there's crazy CG shots that go into the doll's eyes, and when the dolls eventually explode, it's done in like green fire.
Yeah, all the explosions are
like
green.
a fantasy universe.
It's weird. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, they're all green.
I don't know.
Actually, I think like every explosion in this is like a big giant green explosion.
Some weird CG green explosion.
Yeah. Which ends up
being
and like, it kind of works in the style. Like it is, you are watching it and you are like, yeah, that is, CGI fire going over a man or something like that. But because
the movie is interrogating artificial things in the first place, right? So it being a little kind of artificial feeling is sort of interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And when he's going through the all the bootleg stuff in that warehouse, man, and they have those sneakers that are like Puma, like with 2 M's.
Yes. Yeah. So good. Yeah, the movie is very, very self-aware of this idea of like knockoff American products as a metaphor for making American films as a Hong Kong artist. But the one moment that was sort of to your point, Jamie, where you were like, just like brief momentary experimental choices that he'll do, or like the way that he'll cut 2 shots together to create an impact that seems different than other people would. Mm-hmm. When they get into that high-speed boat chase between the Hong Kong cops and the sort of like the Soviet scuba divers who are trying to steal these dolls, and there's a huge chase with like a dude whipping out a sniper and telling the boat to like hold still while he takes the shot, and it's a huge wide angle lens, like distorted close up of him about to take the shot. It goes to him pulling the trigger, and he shoots this guy in the head and his body falls off the boat. But the headshot of his head exploding, which it does show as like a big squib blood pack like exploding. If you slow that down, that is just a blood pack hanging in a white room.
Oh, really?
And that's it.
Oh, really?
And he throws it in there so fast and so like to the point where it's almost like a weird avant-garde touch that your brain just kind of does the rest, and you go, yeah, that guy's head exploded. But it didn't. Like he literally just put a shot of like a giant blood pack hanging in a room and splattering like paint all over the wall. Like it's crazy.
Oh wow, that's very cool.
Take a screen cap of that just to see it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes. It's nuts. So I'd recommend going back and like checking it out, because that was the first moment where I went, okay, like Choi Hawk is genuinely doing something like experimental here in terms of the crazy formal tricks on top of the like obvious stuff like the sudden dolly and crane movements where just like it'll hone in on a face or an object or a building seemingly at random just during like a dialogue scene.
Yeah, like there's a part where they're going across a bridge to transition into another scene, and they're both in the car, and there's more detail to it which we'll get to, but basically he just like kind of cranes off of the bridge, and it even does like a little bit of a kind of a side tilt a little bit, and the dialogue is still going, but you just get this like beautiful shot of the wide bridge that they're going over, and like yeah, he has some really amazing expressive ways of using the camera. Another one,
and of course the transitions too. Like the Brandon warned me about this one, the POV shot of his foot going into the knockoff Puma shoes, which then dissolves into a POV shot of the dude in the room like hitting the pool cue.
Yes, and then it follows the the ball, and then swings right back into his face. I think it's Eddie. That's the character.
Yeah.
And then he cuts away from him making eye contact with someone to JCVD. So you realize that they're just kind of like making eye contact with each other and recognizing each other. It's just such a great and expressive way. And he doesn't even need to do it, but it just looks amazing. And he has these like innovative and creative ideas. Or even when they do that really silly cart pulling race, and it starts
the rickshaw race.
Oh, dude! Of Van Damme's shoes falling apart slowly, and at first it almost looks like because they're using these like they're using these like I don't know what kind of shoes they're, but they have those like
hydroplane. It has a hydroplane sole.
Yeah. So, and he does full zoom-ins of them like almost engaging before the race, and then they start to fall apart. It's awesome.
Like that moment was like, especially too, because like that's a scene that everyone else would cut from the movie. Yeah, where it's just like he's literally just like doing like a race with his buddy Rob Schneider is hanging on the back of his cart, and
slapping him with
like
fish.
Van Damme is the one. Yeah, well, that's just it too, because like he does this race in order to keep in good standing with a Hong Kong gangster named Skinny in the film, who he notices is like importing the exploding dolls from the beginning, which is going to come into the conspiracy, and which Choi Hak straight up turns into a legit set piece with the cameras attached, like rigged to the cart as if he was filming a car chase, diving, spinning, alley shots, extreme inserts, as Jamie mentioned, of like his soles ripping to pieces because his shoes are knockoffs. And literally having the line of someone watching that happen and going, what kind of scumbag would sell that man some knockoffs? And you get tons of like cart crashes, Schneider straight up whipping Van Damme's butt cheeks with an eel, which they get from a market that they ripped through at one point, taking a shortcut. And you get a close-up of Van Damme's ass just being whipped with an eel.
Van Damme looks behind him and he's just like, hey, what are you doing? Like...
Yeah.
And then he starts whipping him again, dude. It's like, why are you whipping this guy? You're in a race, man. Come on. Well, I mean, maybe he was giving him some good...
Yeah, he's like, you gotta want it. I think that's what he says as he's just slapping him with an eel.
Yeah, but obviously this fun can't last for very long because the conspiracy has to come through, and his gangster pal Eddie pulls a body double cheat where he replaces and gets a guy taking his spot, and he actually gets his body double instantly killed by Russian agents who are looking for like they want him due to his connection to this sort of conspiracy, and there's this insane Irish shot that I think is meant to be the POV of like the gun barrel of the silenced pistol that's about to be shot and execute the body double.
It goes from like the guy's eye or iris through the scope, and then does it go like back into the scope and into his eye at a certain point? That's crazy. Like.
It's insane, and it leads to a wild car chase shootout in a grocery store with the camera sliding down the Russian guns, hitting the triggers, hitting his finger, and flying across the room as Van Damme is kicking himself in the direction of like falling knives, and like the crazy editing in the scene will basically just like briefly enter slow motion so that you can watch Van Damme get his like cracked over the skull with like a can from the grocery store, or so it can briefly go in. The camera will just become a bullet, and it will just go through various objects being shot into people. And Van Damme's just like leaping over cars. One part blew my mind where he kicks a dude off the top of the crashed van, throws him down headfirst onto the grocery store floor, snapping his neck, which we get an insert shot of the man's neck snapping.
Yeah.
And then he uses the dude's like lifeless corpse. He steps on his ass crack to launch himself over the van.
Uses his taint
just
as a
furthering
step.
that dude's neck into the ground. I was like, oh my God.
That is wild stuff. This whole sequence, even in the grocery store, is crazy. Like the cans being shot through as they're fighting with the knives at one point.
Yes.
It even ends with Rob Schneider throwing full speed a can of soup at the woman's head and knocking her out.
I love how you guys
yes, the Hong Kong cop played by Carmen Lee, who's really good in Johnny To's firefighter melodrama Lifeline, by the way, which I just watched last year. So I was like, oh shit, I recognize her.
That's awesome.
I like because you don't realize she's a cop right away. I almost thought she worked there, and she was just like trying to defend her store, and she's like, wow, this shopkeeper is like really bringing it right now. And then you find out, of course, she's a cop.
Yeah, why does the shopkeeper ready to take on KGB agents with her gun?
Yeah, just goes into action. I'm like, damn, okay, she's really trying to protect her small business.
Well, that's one of the best things about this is Choi Hawk throws you into every one of these set pieces, intending you to be like, this is incredibly confusing and almost slapstick in terms of how much shit is happening. And then they kind of loosely figure it out after the scenes where they go like, oh yeah, we've identified the guys who were attacking you were KGB Russian intelligence, and you get like Rob Schneider doing a little bit of his shtick where he's just like, well, maybe he wasn't so intelligent, you know?
He's so bad.
A lot of the scenes,
he's both bad, but also I think perfectly cast, just in the sense that like he's given the thankless role of like shitty American sidekick partner that the action star has to get, and they did so much in the 90s. But at the same time, like
the jokes feel
doing
really
his SNL bozo shtick. And being revealed to, as we find out, be a CIA agent being manipulated internally by like multiple other surprise CIA agents. Like, it's such a bumbling depiction of American espionage tradecraft that it kind of works for me.
Yeah, I do like that. It's like an idiot like Rob Schneider portraying that is really smart and funny.
He's an idiot American as far as the Hong Kong characters are all concerned.
I just did find his his moments to mostly be very kind of just, I mean, they're obviously eye-rolly, but I found them also to be a little bit annoying. For some reason, it didn't quite work for me as much. I still really like this movie, by the way, but just Rob Schneider. It didn't quite work for me as much as like something like Joe Piscopelli in Dead Heat, I think it's Dead Heat.
Oh, Piscopo. Speaking of another SNL alumni making his way into an action film that he maybe shouldn't have been in.
And for some reason, I don't know why that film within that kind of comedy style works for me a little more in that context than this. I really don't know what it is, because they're pretty much doing the like same kind of shtick. And see, that's what's funny is I think they're using it to the same ends, where they're both kind of creating a parody of like the buddy America, or like the funny guy that he kind of has to hang out with a little bit. And I do find it, again, I won't argue that Schneider's like the best or anything. It's just, I did find him suitably cast for the purpose of being a bumbling idiot American, essentially. Right. It doesn't help that his character's kind of designed to be completely unlikable and annoying. So
he's so annoying. Like even just like the tacky floral shirts, and how just like annoying and abusive he is generally.
Those style of floral shirts are so popular right now. Those types of flowery shirts, a lot of those now.
The Hawaiian.
Oh yeah, dude, it's coming back.
One of like the first jokes he makes to like those dancers earlier on is like, I've always been against underwear. My record proves that. It's one of those random things he says in passing, and I'm just like,
yeah. I think he also tells them to be skinny. He just is like, and look skinny, like something like that. So he comes out, and that is, like I said, it is on purpose. He's definitely they don't come out the gate with that character just to be like, he's a likable guy. That's obvious. I just find Rob Schneider to be very just annoying. So it did hit me a little bit throughout the film. Like anytime he popped up and they did one of their
you don't jokes. Appreciate him bringing some of that Deuce Bigelow male gigolo energy,
that hot chick energy,
Hong Kong action.
No, I mean, I like watching Van Damme go off of him, because when Van Damme starts to do wacky comedy, I find him endearing, and I enjoy it. So
Van Damme is legitimately, he moves between being like intense and a physical specimen and being legitimately hilarious in this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy what he's doing in this. It is some of his most like energetic action sequences that he's done. And he is, like we said before, he's doing things that he hasn't really done before, or at least we haven't seen him do. but then he's also completely in the wackiest character mode that I've ever seen him in too.
Oh, dude, all the like slapstick mugging that he does, like when the V6 jeans woman Karen Lee shows up, played by Lila Russian, she both comes to them and basically it's like, we've been doing tests on the jeans that you've been sending to us, and like, look, here's our jeans. She's like, pull on it, and they pull, it doesn't rip, and they're like, here's your jeans, and they pull it and it rips in like 2 seconds, and Schneider's like, well, he's been working out, and just Van Damme just being like, just falling over holding the jeans and being made to kind of like look like an idiot in that kind of way. Like he's doing like physical gags and trying to lower himself into being like doing comedy gags that like a character like Rob Schneider would do, for example.
Yeah, and
just even the comedy is being heightened by the style too, because you get like Rob Schneider, being like, "What? Are you telling me that there's knockoff artists in Hong Kong? Yeah. Like that's insane!" And you just get like this insane high angle shot of her looking down on Big both of them in like a wide angle, seeing the entire room. Like it turns their tacky office into like a claustrophobic, sweaty space. It's great.
And I love that detail too. That even with the camera rising up, their eye level goes up with it too. So it's almost as if she is physically like 7 inches taller than them, at least in the context of the film. So it's kind of I really did like that style stuff.
I also love during this scene too is like they're all in this meeting, they're both getting reamed out, but Jean-Claude is just casually sipping champagne for some reason during this meeting. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because he's just playing like a sleazy character, he's just but also really nice. Like he's the nice guy of everyone. He's as they say, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
He's the king of knockoffs. You yourself, you're the king. Everyone loves you. You're the king of it. And I do love his genuinely like, when we do eventually get to that scene, which I think is a really good scene actually, where he does, he goes out to a restaurant with Schneider, and Schneider leaves briefly to say that he's like going to the bathroom or whatever, and he goes up top and he finds out that his dorky friend, who he's a partner with, is actually a CIA agent / analyst, and he's gone up to the top of the building that they were on. And the way that Choi Hawk shoots that is like Van Damme climbing a giant Coca-Cola ad building that's like threateningly looking over the city, like the American consumerism is on its way as part of this. I don't know. They are relating it a little bit to like the handover to China and everything as well in the sort of history of it. And there's this interesting element there in the way that it's shot and how imposing that Coke ad is. Which also is funny because it reminds me of the tacky product placement in Double Team, where they survived the explosion because of the Coke machine.
Thank God.
So they just putting American product placement in this movie makes a lot more sense due to the subject matter of its like manufacturing and everything, and the tacky product stuff that it's kind of handling. But the part where Van Damme in legitimate pain, he looks at Rob Schneider, who has betrayed him, because he's just like, look, dude, I'm the only guy who would work with you in Hong Kong. Like, everyone knows that you're a knockoff artist, that you sell shit. I was willing to work with you. And he was like, I was the king of knockoffs, but you're still a fake.
Oh, yeah. That line hurt. Like, that was like, ouch. Oh,
he's in pain. He's like, dude, I don't care. Selling knockoff products is the name of the game. That's fine. That's not a betrayal. What's a betrayal is being a fake friend.
That's right.
Being a knockoff friend.
No way,
so knock it off. Oh, yeah. We're getting into it, boys.
That just happened. Okay, one thing we glossed over earlier, I know we just jumped back and forth sometimes, is when they're, I don't know if you noticed, but when Van Damme first pulls up to like that warehouse with all the knockoff products, one of the guys that greets him and starts selling him shit, that is straight up the guy that taught him Muay Thai in Kickboxer.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's cool.
I just I don't know the name of the guy, but I'm like, man, I love how a lot of these like JCVD alumni will just like kind of pop up in these like later roles, whether it's like the late 90s or later on. But like I totally forgot that he was in this, so that was kind of cool to see him.
It's very cool. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
And it's also the same scene, I think, where Harry is introduced, I believe.
Well, yeah, because it's Van Damme going up to the top or realizing that, his buddy is actually a CIA agent, and then immediately grabbing a steel rod and threatening to hurl him over the edge of the giant Coke ad.
Man, like on either end of that rod, man. Just tell me the truth. You lied to me. You lied to me.
It's got this wild, like, bird's eye view angle at one point too, where you can literally see Rob like holding onto the bar, and you can see the street and the edge of the building. And then he does this insanely cool thing that I don't know if I've seen really before, where he zooms completely out from the scene.
Yeah, it's a huge snap zoom where he's filming on like a telephoto lens from like 300 feet away. Yeah, you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's crazy. And you can just see their figures fighting on the rooftop a little bit, just in the background. It's so cool.
Two actors are just talking on a rooftop, like. Troy Hawk is just going full Sam Raimi with these crazy like zoom ins and zoom outs and different like perspective. It's wild, man.
Yeah, and even the fights
and you also get the. Oh, go ahead.
I was just real briefly. Even the fight, like when he gets out initially, when we were talking about where it's revealed the Coca-Cola advertisement and all of that. He's not just fighting the people on the platform, but the camera goes like below the platform, so you see their feet as they're moving, and it's like through the grate. It's just he comes up with amazing shots time after time, and every sequence is just so good.
I wonder if he's just trying to show
and I do love that they do like genuinely elevate some of the, because like again it's really convoluted and the drama is incredibly silly. You kind of have to take the entire thing as like a cartoon dealing in archetypes and dealing in sort of like familiar tropes of the American action film, but doing it in a really silly way. But then you'll just get something genuinely breathtaking, like Van Damme watching those planes take off from Hong Kong in the sunsets while he mourns this like fake friendship and partnership that he just had.
This dark silhouette, just anytime you see Van Damme like perched on top of a building, Kong skyline, that is just that's cinema.
That's an iconic image, Bloodsport, man, when he's doing the splits over top of Hong Kong.
I can harken back to that a little bit. Oh my god, what a
absolutely
so good.
But just like Maximum Risk, this thing moves like crazy once the actual set pieces come underway, because they find out that, now he's kind of working with the CIA. He's kind of working with the V6 Genes representative who has shown up, and they're going to find out what the fuck is going on. Like, how did they sell $5 million of shitty jeans to this company without them even knowing? Because they're like, look, we sell shitty products. We sell Pumas. We sell knockoff Rolexes. But like, as far as we know, we were not selling shitty jeans. So they go to the warehouse to try and figure out where the fuck this manifest is, where the fuck these jeans came from, who did this.
Who's making these jeans with this 8-ounce denim as opposed to the 14-ounce denim that V6 are made with authentically,
That's right. And who's also putting Soviet nanobombs into various parts of the jeans, into the studs. And so they're going to find this out. But once again, before they even get there, a truck bursts out of the warehouse and explodes, and it's like this crazy
seemingly
chase and shootout ensues. Yeah, literally, like they're just going there. You literally think you're about to go see a scene where a bunch of characters go drop some exposition in a warehouse, and instead a truck literally breaks through the frame. And it starts an entire set piece where Van Damme is on top of the truck while inside the sort of like cargo part of the truck, a sniper is picking off various Hong Kong cops and doing so with real precision. And at a certain point, even shoots through the roof of the truck at Van Damme in an insane POV shot of the truck, the top of the truck exploding in the face of the lens and revealing the hole, in which case the camera looks through the hole and sees the henchman pointing the gun through it. I was like, what the hell, dude? How do you even do that?
Oh my God. It's crazy.
And a crazy martial arts fight on top of it. Did you get what was that huge decoration that was on top of the truck? I couldn't figure out. Was that like one of the banners or something?
It looked like the kind of stuff you would have like bamboo scaffolding on the side of a building, but with like just some kind of red drip. I don't even know where that came from.
Yeah, it's cool. They implement it well too, though, which is cool when he starts to like hide on the other side of it as he's climbing it, and then the sniper or the gunman has to decide like which shadow is his, kind of thing. So there's like some suspense built into it a little bit.
Of course, and they even use the little piece of wood pole as well, because Van Damme kicks the sniper off of the truck. It's a huge kick that results in the dude getting full wire pulled and like cannibal holocausted onto the side of a skyscraper on the little wooden. It's ridiculous.
Like with,
and you see all of
There's even
too.
like an insert shot of the bloody pole.
Oh yeah, you see it. It's like dripping blood. Oh, it's gruesome. There's like a
and like this action, and this all happens in like 2 minutes. Like the action is so fast and so unhinged. I actually couldn't like take notes fast enough. I had to like rewatch set pieces because I was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
They've left the tea house at this point, right? With that restaurant they were at.
Yes.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I'm like 75% sure that tea house is the same tea house from that opening scene in Hard Boiled.
That'd be sweet.
Honestly,
that'd be cool
thought
too.
that before when they were just doing the establishing shot outside where they're coming up the stairs, it looked like the same banner that like Giant Fat like slides down with the double guns, of course, and then as soon as they got in there and you start seeing the birds in the bird cages, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is the same tea house. I'm gonna have to look it up after, but
that'd be sweet. If
but like the location work in general and like the production design is like really amazing in this film. Like that location looks awesome. Like I mentioned, the giant Coke ad thing, like on top of the tea house, and how they use that and shoot it just as imposing and insane as they could. But one of the other parts too is when they find those little miniature bombs that look like watch batteries are inside the truck and inside the jeans, in which they find out there's a conspiracy to basically put them inside of radios, stereos, children toys. Like someone is trying to basically pull essentially like a Halloween 3 situation where they're trying to kill all of the various consumers and children of America by just having remote control devices or bombs the size of watch batteries. But they find all that detail out by going to Schneider's espionage base, the CIA base, which, speaking of incredible location work or production design, I don't know, is inside a giant Buddha statue?
Hell yeah.
What the hell was that?
CIA can do whatever they want.
hiding in plain sight, you know.
Like that's another cartoon element where like in Double Team, where just like for a brief time, Van Damme is just doing like training montages on like an island for James Bonds, you know, like it's one of those things that like Trey Hawks doesn't like he feels overdosed on like a cheap American culture and production and entertainment, and it feels like he's kind of throwing it back in their face as like comedy. It's really interesting.
Yeah, like a giant Buddha super lair seems like it would either belong to a superhero or a supervillain, and it's just like they walk in and discuss things with the CIA in there, and then they even cause the whole thing to explode, which is just
with more green CGI flame.
Again, yes, and civilians are just taken out into flames. Like it's a pretty wild scene, actually.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking too, not only does it happen in the location work and some of the production design, like that sort of level of, silliness, there is like that, like the next scene after is when Van Damme has to go back to his partner, Eddie, who he finds out is somehow involved in this conspiracy.
He gets a message from Eddie, and it's literally just a durian. He's like...
Yes, like, oh my God.
Those things come into play later on again.
Yes, of course. And you get when Van Damme goes to confront him, you get like this great shot of him like reflected in the record where he's go like, "My mama loved that song" or something like that. And you just get Eddie, who is like someone again who's just indulging in he's just like ripping his arcade games while he's in there while he's interrogating him, and you do get like. I do like the close up on Van Damme's like weary eyes, like drenched in the angry neon, as again he's dealing with another friendship betrayal where someone else is being fake to him, and he's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And the guy goes, "Look, fine, I'll get you all the evidence. I can show you. All of these different groups are colluding with one another, and they're fucking with your jeans in your warehouse." And he goes to get that evidence from a safe, which has a rocket in it, and which sends Eddie flying through his own wall into the air, exploding into chunks.
My jaw dropped during that scene. I'm just like, wait, what? He was just about to like open this thing, and then now he's just being shot through the window with the rocket into a wall and then explodes. I'm like, Eddie!
And it's so crazy because all they had to really do was just like he opens it up, it's a booby trap. There's like a little grenade explosion or something, and he flies into the wall, and then they have like a morning scene or something like that. But no, they rocket launcher him through a wall and explode his entire being. It's just like
he literally got Death Wish 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is how I'm convinced that this is knowingly like satire.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just has to be after certain points. It's so silly.
Of course, all of a sudden, a mob of shirtless, sweaty dudes with machetes just show up out of fucking nowhere. Because there's always just like a mob of shirtless dudes with machetes just waiting around the corner, ready to just fuck shit up in Kowloon.
Yes.
This scene is the one that most reminded me of Lau Kar Lung because like that kind of set piece is straight from Drunken Master 2. Where Jackie has to fight like 50 dudes in like a multi-level room in that film, and it was one of the fights Jackie didn't love doing because it involved wire work, and I don't know why you hire Lau Kar Lung if you didn't want wire work. Sorry, Jackie, but it's an amazing scene, and Lau Kar Lung loves filming that many people, and like that moment where like Rob Schneider, like I think Van Damme at one point like throws Schneider into a roll, and while he's rolling, just as he gets out of the place where his body just was, you get like 10 machetes hitting the ground just where his, they were about to slice him up. Like little moments like that is like classic, like we're talking like 70s and 80s Hong Kong stuff, before heroic bloodshed. Like we're talking just classic Kung Fu cinema stuff. It's awesome.
He wraps a chain around his arm too and starts using that to like
so
also
sick. He even gets like the hero shot while he's doing it and the camera's pushing in on him, wrapping it around his wrist. It's awesome.
Yeah. He just like drop kicks this one guy, and he does that like sort of like double like kick where you're sort of like just pushing out with like both of your kicks, both of your feet in midair. Like it just looks so good. They also go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I also love like when it starts to get frantic, like when he's starting to when he has 30 people on him and he's like diving under the table to separate himself from them and then breaks it open so that he can kind of like disperse the group a little bit, but then pushes the rest of the table at them so he has some room to run away and get some more space from them. Like it's really intelligently choreographed as well, and I just love when it gets frantic like that and he's kind of dodging on the ground because it is a little bit of a predecessor for what we're going to see when he gets to the ship and starts sliding around the crates and all of that. So it's it's great. It's a great sequence.
Yeah, this set piece is one of my favorites in the movie just because of how much punching and rolling and sliding and when Van Damme is parkouring into the rafters and the camera is like floating and changing elevations with him, and he's also like still drop kicking people while he's changing which part of the building that he's in. And there's also a part where at one point it gets incredibly meta where there's a dolly shot of him picking up a dolly and that has a camera rig attached to it, and you get the POV shot of him swinging it into like 10 guys' faces, and we just get the shot from the dolly's perspective hitting people in the face.
It's so good.
They also do such a good job of hiding the fact that it's a stuntman Van Damme. Like, I don't know, like, obviously they're, just better at doing that in Hong Kong than they are. Like, when you see Van Damme's stunt double in an American Van Damme film, like, it's so obvious it's him. In these, it's so seamless.
Yeah.
Like, and I wonder if that's why they dyed his hair so dark in this. I mean, I know he obviously just, I feel like it was part of the character, but dyeing his hair that dark, I think just made it, not having to put, like, a Chinese stuntman in, like, a Van Damme wig, I think, just made it look a little bit more seamless. It was pretty.
Yeah, because in this it really does look great. Like all of the connective tissue of it. And honestly, I will say, I mean, they must have got a pretty good stunt double for Schneider as well, because honestly, Schneider is not too physically terrible in this scene when you get like that amazing close up of Van Damme stepping on the orange as he lifts his way over the dolly. He kicks Schneider onto the dolly and then kicks, like almost like drop kicks the dolly down a path that leads all the way down to the security room. And like that's almost like a classic like Jackie use of your environment where like he's
stuff. It's very like in the book of Jackie Chan.
Yeah,
this
and just having Schneider
me...
fly into the security room, and as he flies headfirst into it, like fly into like a diving knee that he does on the guy who's like operating the surveillance cameras and stuff like that. Like, it's insane.
Have you guys seen I'm pretty sure it's this film, Rumble in the Bronx with Jackie Chan?
Definitely, yeah.
And there is a group. It kind of reminds me of this because they're just in a similar looking location with like a bunch of different things that they can throw at each other, shelves and whatever else. But it's the same similar situation where Jackie Chan is kind of going up against like 30 different dudes in this kind of enclosed space. And it just reminds me very much of this fight. So that's another one I'd recommend too if no one's seen it. Rumble in the Bronx. Really good.
I definitely want to screen that at review sometime. I still haven't shown any Jackie Chan films yet. I know I'm going to show one at some point. Rumble in the Bronx would be very, I mean, that was also...
It's a good one. I like it.
I think that was like his first film from movies he'd done in Hong Kong that was like re-released theatrically in North America. It was a huge hit. I think they might have released it. It was either just before Rush Hour or just after Rush Hour. They're like, oh shit, people like Jackie Chan, and then boom, they put out Rumble in the Bronx like in theater, and it was like a huge hit on home video. Yeah, that's a good movie. And I think we've got in that movie, it's Vancouver standing in for New York.
Okay, yeah.
Pretty sure it's shot in Vancouver.
They love doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
They love doing it.
A lot closer to Hong Kong.
Yeah, and this set piece I believe ends with it's the part where Van Damme jumps on the moped and sends the crates of fruit launching into the camera lens as they eventually manage their way out. Oh, and I forgot briefly in that scene too. There's so many notes on these action scenes that I couldn't even keep track of individual
through
shots.
Roofs or something like that, like two sheet metal roofs or something.
Well, because that's what's so funny. Like even as they escape with the VCR footage, that's going to give them proof that the V6 representative is actually also an agent and kind of in on all this warehouse shit that's going on. He can't help but do like insane fluid shit like that one crane from one level to the next one as they go up a level, and then give them another stunt where they like leap 2 stories down and like break the VCR on their way out. Mm-hmm. And it also and it leads to Van Damme goes to meet Skinny to be like, the Hong Kong gangster from the beginning, to be like, look, the Russians, they've killed Eddie. There's this crazy conspiracy. Something's going on. But Skinny uses this word. They executed Eddie, and you just get these intense like.
Van Damme is just like, why did you use that word? Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and this scene is one of the most insanely shot things I've ever seen because it turns into it's half like spaghetti western close-ups of their intense eyes as they start to realize that maybe Skinny is the one who killed Eddie and he's in on it and they're about to have a fight, and then it starts with these long shots entirely shown in like reflections of water on the parking garage, and then it's Dutch angles of walking and tracking as they have their conversation, and then it's like these bizarre like bleeding crossfades of like the henchmen starting to run after him, and Van Damme turning into like he becomes like a supernatural monster who's like climbing pillars.
Yeah. He climbs up that one pillar like this.
Yeah,
is he able to do that? Like, it's crazy.
They've never previously established anything about him being able to do that, and it has high angle POV shots of him up there spinning around the pillar looking down at all of the guys, and I'm like, guys, where do you think that he went? Like he's right above you, and then slow-mo shots as he jumps his way down and the camera is spinning and focus shifting while he's kicking the shit out of them, and he kidnaps Skinny by locking him in the backseat of the car and getting into
the passenger seat, which is a very funny detail of how he does it.
Yeah, and then he has another 30 men pursuing him, and instead of getting into another martial arts fight with 30 guys, he decides to run them over with the car and send the car crashing through a window, flipping down an entire story and hitting the back of a truck and continuing the flip and driving away safely, of course.
Those guys,
foolproof.
Some of the workers in that scene, like, were pretty close to that car when it was.
It's an insanely dangerous looking stunt.
Yeah, it's crazy. Also, just the transition from what we were just talking about to this parking lot scene is insane. Like, it just goes from that kind of escape of everyone that was in Eddie's group, like after them, to this scene, basically moment after moment. Like it doesn't. It It doesn't have much time in between, or any time at all, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
So you're just going from one crazy sequence to the other at this point.
No, and what's so crazy is when you think about it is, again, how generically written this scene technically is.
Yeah.
Like, it's like Van Damme goes to meet the Hong Kong gangster thinking he's looking for help, and then he's like, oh shit, you're actually in on it, and I'm gonna beat up your men and kidnap you, and now I'm gonna take you to the CIA, and we're gonna get to the bottom of this. And like, that's a scene that another director would be like, have the wide-eyed plot realization, and the good guy like shoots his henchman and then beats him up and puts him in a car. And it's like, no, for Choi Hawk, this is like, Van Damme is climbing pillars, and and the henchmen are moving so fast, it's almost like they're moving
blurry
at hyperspeed, and he's doing crazy slow-mo car stunts off multiple stories, and like there's no reason to have as much effort as being put into the action for that specific scene.
Choi Hawk's, like, the physics in Choi Hawk movies are just constantly evolving to this, like, you just have to go with it. You're forced to just keep up with the movie. Like, you have to keep up with it. It's moving at such a crazy breakneck speed. Even like, the characters on screen, they can't be contained in just one shot. You've got all these crazy cross dissolves and trails, and it's like almost psychedelic, like the way this action.
Yes. Straight up. Like, you feel like you're watching like an experimental thing happen on another planet for like a few seconds. Yeah. And then it's like, he takes him to the giant CIA Buddha, where on the tape it's revealed that the V6 Jane's lady is the real culprit and kind of in on it. And Van Damme is kind of like torturing the Hong Kong gangster and, yelling at him.
He's so protective of Eddie. Like, he just, anytime anyone fucks with Eddie in this movie, Van Damme just freaks the fuck out. Like, not so much with Rob Schneider's character, but no, him and Eddie must have been really tight.
Oh yeah.
They did rickshaw races together.
That was their thing, right?
That bonds you for life. You're whipping each other in the ass with
eels,
an eel.
yeah.
That's
So
you get tight.
There's a scene with Rob.
It's pretty intimate.
There's a funny scene where Rob Schneider's sort of licking his wounds, and Karen Lee sort of confronts him about what the hell's going on. And it's kind of like this, like, sexually charged, like, first aid scene where Karen, like, okay, Rob Schneider is trying to, like...
She's just rubbing her breasts on his blood.
Rob Schneider is literally, he's got, like, 4 splashes or scratches on his back. And so he's decided that he's going to patch them up. He's got, like, 4, like, strips of, like, gauze or something like that on the inside of his blazer. And because he can't put them on all himself, presumably... He's trying to, like, back into this blazer that has these, like, strips of gauze on it to try to patch himself out. And then Currently walks in the room and is just like, what the hell is going on? Offers to, like, put them on for him. But the way that happens, like, the first time she tries to help him, he starts bleeding on her breasts, basically. And then she's trying to get them on and her blazer's coming off. And it's just like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we realize through the information that she's sort of in on it, that she is trying to disarm him or seduce him, and she does eventually kind of like handcuff him and be like, I'm also, but it turns out she's not in on the conspiracy. She's also a CIA agent who was watching him because there's a mole in his department.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
A reveal.
No, it's literally not the last one because
it's the second last. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Russians, I think, kidnapped Tommy and Karen because I think it's Van Damme and Schneider and the V6 Jeans lady Karen. They all decide that they are going to, start working together to find out what's happening here. But before they can do that, the Russians kidnap Tommy and Karen and put them on a cargo ship with the knockoff jeans filled with explosives, which is insane. Again, that this entire plot hinges on exploding jeans. I just want to clarify that. Which is, the movie it knows how ridiculous this is. And which again, we also find out are Russian, that they are Soviet nanobombs.
We've got Russian conspiracy, just like Maximum Risk.
Yeah, this was just a big thing, and then it was making a big revival, I think, in the 90s. Yeah. I mean, everyone was doing parodies of 80s action where those guys were the baddies as well. So it's just kind of like, I feel like, everyone's kind of doing it's a game of broken telephone is taking place where the Russians are just getting more and more cartoonish.
shows up in the scene too, and he tells Rob Schneider, "Hey, she's in on it too, or she's an agent or something like that." And Rob immediately just springs into action and like kicks the gun out of her hand, and like Jean-Claude like grabs it, and like he's always just like assisting him in these really amazing ways. But, yeah.
Yes.
During that fight too, like Karen like rips open Jean-Claude Van Damme's shirt for some reason, like just totally rips it in half, just like the jeans earlier on.
They want to add to the sexual charge.
Yeah, it's,
that reminded me too.
Yeah.
We forgot to mention just the real brief comedic joke when they're in the restaurant earlier with Rob, where Van Damme is just sitting down and his shirt starts to rip because it's Schneider's shirt and he's just so muscular.
Oh, yes.
Anyway.
that was a very nice touch.
And they were like, "Hey, that's a really expensive shirt." And he's like, "Oh, oops."
Yeah.
And he's just flexing more.
Rips it again.
And it's funny too when they're trying to check.
But Van Damme is, he's infiltrating now this like Russian conspiracy to send explosive genes to America, and it's taking place on this cargo ship, and where the Russian henchman gets one of the greatest lines I've ever heard in a movie like this, which is, "The best part about microchips is you get mega bucks."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Oh, I see what they're little chips, but big dollars." Okay, I understand.
That's great.
And you also get Tommy's boss, Harry, shows up to save them from the Russians. And the Russians, again, are insanely evil. They have like a vial of acid that they're threatening to pour down Karen's throat.
Yeah.
And when Harry shows up, Paul Sorvino from Goodfellas, once again, as the CIA sort of like head of Rob Schneider's sort of mission that he's doing. It's a double twist, because one of the twists is that he's revealing he didn't die in the giant Buddha explosion that almost killed Van Damme. Which, by the way, I did briefly forget to mention the part where the explosion, the green explosion that blows up the Buddha, it shreds Van Damme's pants. And there's actually a part where he sits in a car and he's literally steaming. His clothes are still steaming from the explosion, and you watch him put on the knockoff pants. He's just like, "Well, I guess I got to put on the shitty pants because my pants exploded."
And that leads, I forgot too, that eventually leads to him having that little freak out moment with the pants where he's like, "Oh, these could explode at any moment," and then changes.
Yes, he has to take them off. He's in his underwear for a little while.
Yeah, and it's kind of played comedically a little bit too.
Yeah, but the double twist is that Harry isn't dead, but then Harry is the mole for the Russians.
Dun dun dun.
Did not see that.
And he's like, "Once we're gonna get our baby bombs all over the U.S. and there's gonna be a satellite bill that would make HBO green with envy."
And then his plan is to like individually, basically like not blackmail. I guess what would be the word? I guess
I think blackmail's right.
Oh, okay,
sort of, but blackmail on a pretty extreme scale,
Yeah.
not just like on a personal scale. Yeah,
Basically,
he's going to
it's like, give me the
blackmail
funds,
North America,
or I'm going to explode every single pair of these jeans and products that we put it in. That's essentially his big evil plan.
Yeah, even though, as we've understood, no one would wear these jeans for more than a day because they would rip. So it's not like that foolproof of a plan.
Yeah, if you just like
shoddy quality,
even just taking one step in them, they would rip. Like, there's no protection.
So his idea of getting like every person in America wearing these pants and then threatening the president to blow up the pants of every man, woman, and child in America. It's a ridiculous plan on its face, but like, I'm sorry, I'm nitpicky. And
when he was saying it, I was just kind of like, yeah, go through it, whatever. But now that we're reiterating it, it's so funny. It's just unbelievably hilarious. Oh my God. That's a Dr.
Van
Evil
Damme,
like plan, you know?
It is. It's so ridiculous. But Van Damme finally does, at a certain point, he does get to the ship, resulting in one last insane set piece that they have for you, where they take Hong Kong action filmmaking into the physical setting of manufactured goods smuggling of these, which again is serving as this, Hong Kong and America relationship. And you can't get a better visual metaphor for what Choi Hark himself is doing, but also also just the visuals itself of like the metal cargo containers almost squishing people, the henchman who's trying to like kill him with his broken glass from his glasses lens, and just the grimy wet surfaces era,
the sliding,
Van Damme,
like the whole
Van Damme literally using the set as a slip and slide. It's amazing.
And it's the whole, it's almost all of the choreography, which I found amazing too. Is like there's moments where he gets up and he starts kicking people and maybe gets up and spins around and shoots, but a lot of it, like I would say at least half of it, probably more, is watching Van Damme slide around on his back or stomach and doing little flips on the ground and going down a different,
shooting people while he's sliding and rolling,
a different aisle of the containers and shooting another guy that pops up. Like, it's just absolutely insane.
In Hong Kong action films, like heroic bloodshed films, Hong Kong action films, I just flubbed there. If you're sliding or somersaulting or jumping through the air, you can't get shot. Right?
Yes,
so
that is the rule.
Right? So if you're sliding and you're on your knees, you're good, man. So that's why he's always sliding around. You can't you're just immune to all like conventional weapons when you're in that state of like sliding across surfaces. And Van Damme is like so greased up. Like that just like he's ready to, I don't even know if there was any oil or grease on this ship. He's just naturally like so wet.
Yeah. I think at one point it's like
that's that cocaine, brother.
That will do it. That one shot where it's the one where the two containers are about to close in on him, and he goes back and forth using his right leg and or his right side and left side to climb up, but while he's still laying down and out of the container space is just absolutely insane. Like, it's one of the coolest stunts I've ever seen. In an action film, honestly. It looks incredibly dangerous. I don't know. I'm assuming maybe the containers were like just, fake containers in that sequence, because if that stuntman fucked that up, it looked devastating.
Yeah, there's this one.
Yeah, no, like some of the stunt work that's happening in here too, which is, again, it's where Ringo Lam focuses more on, sort of like gruesome intensity. This is just like it is almost nonsense at a certain point. Like when Van Damme shoots a guy with just his handgun, they will fly through the air like they were just shot by like a 50 cal sniper, and he will like run, wall jump, kick simultaneously, and like, again, throats are being cut with like glasses lenses, and bodies are being shredded by the CIA agent Karen, who's just like AKing dudes out of dock towers, and every person dies with like 10 different squibs going off, and it's insane.
I love how much Karen Lee gets in on the action in this final fucking shootout, because she is just like getting in there, blowing dudes away, also kind of sliding around a little bit. Like, she was
hanging off of giant tires.
Yeah, she was kicking fucking ass, like, big time. She's like picking.
That's the thing too.
Yeah, and nail bombs out of her bra, like.
Yes,
because one guy
they
just
really
like
utilized the space.
Yeah, they made good use
like
of that space.
Because it's not just the container, like all that stuff is great. Him sliding around and all that is awesome. But like,
just the boat hooks, the netting,
the elevation. Like you see people kind of like climbing cranes and sliding down the sides of them to get to the giant tires, like we were talking about, to kind of find shelter at a certain point from the gunfire. And like, there's just a lot going on, but it is all very coherent. Like, it doesn't get disorienting too much, which is, when you're watching it, you'd think it would, because there is a lot of moving parts to this.
I mean, when that one guy gets like decapitated by like a loose wire that breaks from one of the storage units or something.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that shot. One of the container's cables snaps, and the whole container, I think, actually just crashes into the guy's body, and you just see him fly.
Right before it crashes into him, it like. So like
the wire there's a POV of the wire going directly into his neck, and they don't show the decapitated head fly or anything like that, but you can presume that it was there and it was maybe cut out.
I do like that they show the shoe fall next to JCVD
sound effect
below.
You get the sound effects of like, like
oh yeah, it gets mangled.
I don't.
Yeah, people just like, again, the way they use the containers, the way they use the movement, like the way they use the set and the cameras moving around it, it's insane. Van Damme gets into a knife fight at one point, and one of my favorite things is, Van Damme's gotten into lots of knife fights across his career, and I was thinking about that one a little bit in Time Cop, because there's a part where he uses a towel as like the little sort of like martial arts countering device to like lock his arms up and stuff like that. In this, do you want to guess what he uses? It's the explosive genes. The genes are and we know that they're a shitty made product too. So it's so funny that he pulls those things pretty tight trying to lock that dude's arms in, but he gets away with it.
A pair of the no, they would have had to have been the knockoffs actually.
Yeah, because they were on the knockoff boat, man. It's all that was around them. And of course, this whole thing climaxes on Van Damme shirtlessly boating away from the entire cargo ship of knockoff jeans, exploding in the background, sending him and the boat briefly into like a no gravity slow-mo maneuver for a while, and like the lighting is so bright behind them that you can't even see what's like happening. It's ridiculous.
And this is after one of the henchmen gets crushed by an anchor, I believe, too.
Yes. Speaking of other creative uses of the boats to kill the henchmen, every device on this boat is used to crush someone's body. Yeah.
It's funny too because the boat is moving. Every time they show it moving, it's supposed to be like super dramatic and tense, but you're like, but everything that's happening on
it's like it's a cargo ship, like how fast can those things go?
Presumably, Paul Sorvino also dies in this explosion.
He's supposed to, yes, because he's using the remote control device, and they assume that the pants are also near him or something.
And I don't, like Van Damme or Schneider asks Karen Lee what happened to him, and he's just like, I smoked his fat ass like a Roman candle and just body shamed Paul Sorvino.
Which is a cool line, but we're like, we didn't see you do that.
Did you do that? I mean, he just kind of died in that explosion.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't show his body, but he does. They do show him reacting to the explosion.
He reacts to the explosion,
being surprised that it's on his ship. So I assume that he just exploded with it.
Yeah.
But then they have that secondary scene.
2 hours later.
The secondary ending is so hilarious. And just once again led me to believe that this movie knows how hilarious this is.
Oh, yeah. You can't end like that and be like, this is a serious thriller.
Like they literally gave it the action finale with the giant explosion. That's your last scene type of ending. And then it literally comes up with a title card for note that's like 2 hours later. And you're like, what? And you're like, that's such a funny amount of time to say that this happens.
Later,
like it's not
like be like dealing with like cops and like all sorts of shit. Like they would not be like chilling, having a drink, like decompressing,
just at a bar,
unwinding after like a crazy day. Like they're just in a bar. Rob Schneider's
and also Choi Hark using the handover celebration in the background of the event. So you literally have like the woman on TV saying like the use of fireworks traditionally is a symbol of celebration, and this is a particularly meaningful use of fireworks because we are going to have 2 nights of Hong Kong literally smoking up $100 million of fireworks to celebrate this handover, and you have this kind of thing taking place. And then they're also like, there was also a huge explosion a couple hours ago that people are wondering if it is at all involved to do with the celebration of the
and they set another one off.
Yes, well, and then it's fucking Rob Schneider and Van Damme in the bar just goofing around, having a drink, and then they literally are playing with the little detonator that they got from the boat, and they flick it, they switch it on, and it cuts to Harry, surprise reveal, he's still alive, and he's working on explosive children's toys. Now
2 hours later,
carrying out his mission.
Dedication.
Just 2 hours later, he's like, okay, the jeans didn't work. Let's try toys.
We're moving on to the next product.
For a third time. This is the third time he explodes a green flame, right?
Yes, and then he explodes again. Like the twist is that once again that he's alive, and the twist is that he then dies in because they accidentally set it off. But the gag isn't complete unless it cuts back to Van Damme and Schneider in the bar, and you can see the green explosion in the background going off, and they literally look over and they're like, "Oh shit! Did we do that?"
Yeah.
I love the conversation they're having in this bar because, they're clearly very tired of working in the gene industry, and so Rob Schneider's just spitballing other ideas that could make them just
a women-only football league
with just
league,
them,
and he was the only guy in the league. I'm like, why is Happy Gilmore Productions not produced that movie yet? A football league.
Yeah, that sounds like
all women.
That sounds like a Schneider comedy.
And Schneider's the only male football player in it in an all-women league. Give me that movie.
And then is it Van Damme or Schneider who gets the final line of the movie as we cut to credits, which is, I kid you not, I don't even know why they say this, but it's such like a sign off for the film. And again, how knowing it is. No action movie would be complete without sweat, is the last line of this movie. And really? I'd have to go back and watch it again. I don't know why it's even said.
I remember that, and I just watched it.
Yeah, because that's so disconnected from like the girls' sports league thing that he's saying, which is what I thought was the ending thing. So yeah, that is weird.
He also comes up with
comes
up with the idea for a universal remote. It's just like, what if instead of having three remotes, you just have, and, you could control your jacuzzi, your television, like. Thinking like,
and I was like, speaking of Happy Madison, so he invented Click as well. That was the idea.
Schneider might be better than we think.
There's more to them.
I'm kidding.
Schneider-Tourism. It's next on the block. Let's let's give that a go.
I already did that in my rewatch project. I cannot do it again.
What a movie.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up because we're going long. Yeah. But the last thing that needs to get noted here before we get to reductive rating round is one of the greatest original credit songs ever written for a movie, in my opinion, is in this film. Yeah. And I hope that Jamie listened to the entire thing, because it's by the American rock duo Sparks, which is insane that they did it in the first place.
When you told me that band, because I'd heard the song, I did not know it was Sparks. That is crazy.
Yeah, like that is crazy that Sparks is the one doing this credit song. And the credit song in the lyrics is straight up saying everything that we've been saying about this movie, where like about the subject of itself being a knockoff American product just as an existing film. And the lyrics are like, I confess that this is really not my song. I bought it in Hong Kong. It's a knockoff.
It's a knockoff, baby.
Yeah.
My mind was so...
Yeah, I confess that this is really not my voice, although I had a choice. Like, you could imagine Choi Hark singing this song. Okay. It's a knockoff.
I was so blown away by this discovery that I had to look up, like, how on earth did Sparks connect with Choi Hark? But apparently, Sparks had a song from 1994 called Choi Hark. He wrote it. They wrote a song about Choi Hark, and it goes like this: I'm Choi Hark. I'm a filmmaker. I've won some awards. The real song.
Okay, that's the sickest song ever written.
The lyrics are: I'm Choi Hark. I'm a film director. I've made several films. I'm Choi Hark. I'm a film director. I've won several awards for my films. My first film was The Butterfly Murders, Shanghai Blues, Peking Opera Blues, Swordsman.
Okay, no, you're fucking with me. This isn't real.
Wikipedia page, like a song.
You got to look this up right now. As soon as we sign off, go listen to the song. It's going to blow your mind.
I'm going to go listen to this.
I'm thinking this is what led to Sparks doing this song for Choi Hark like 4 years later.
That's so sick.
Crazy.
That's wild.
That is so insane. And Jamie, this is one of those episodes where I'm going to request that you please play the knockoff song at the end of this episode so that everyone can get a little taste of that. Just play like that first verse and chorus, because even the chorus where it's like so close to real, the look, the feel, so close, and yet the paint is still wet. It's a perfect metaphor for exactly what this movie is fucking doing on every level. It's incredible.
I will definitely do that.
Look up that Choi Hark song too, because that's a good track.
It's so I'm gonna have to look that up immediately after we finish here. But we should wrap up. So pivoting towards reductive rating round, this, if it wasn't clear by the excitement in the voice, this was an easy 4 for me, actually. And I honestly think this has just skyrocketed to near the top of my Van Damme rankings. This is like a top probably 4 or 5 Van Damme for me now, and that is actually a lot, because we have watched a lot of I have watched like 15 or 20 at this point. So this is definitely on the highest end for me. And it sounds crazy because this was a complete bomb, and it was absolutely hated on release, and it still has pretty low ratings from like a lot of people. But this is like, for me, one of the most formally unhinged action films of its era, and it absolutely bakes that into like what it's doing as a text in a really, really cool way. Like Choi Hark, you can almost feel the bitterness of like his American films being rejected, despite the fact that he is obviously an expert filmmaker, and just doubling down on all of the aspects of Double Team that people rejected, like the insane, convoluted, like cartoon conspiracy that like feels stolen from like 50 other, sort of like American action films or American products that Americans love. You can almost feel him being like, Americans and their fucking CIA conspiracies and
Coca-Cola.
genes and everything needs to explode. And, like that's movies to them, I guess. So, and as a result, he made the best possible version of a movie like that I've ever seen. And again, just absolutely insane. Like the Puma sneaker vision, the remote control exploding jeans, the secret CIA meetings on top of Coke ads. The camera will just veer into like a person's point of view into a phone. It'll just become a bullet for a few seconds. The whole thing is nonstop gunfights, martial arts, car chases, explosions, and stunts to the point where it actually just does become funny. And Van Damme and Schneider are like a surprising, like they have decent comedic chemistry with one another. And maybe just because they're put into such ridiculous situations that it kind of works on that level. Like Schneider just becomes a bumbling American idiot, which he plays well. Van Damme gets to, at the height of his cocaine flop sweat weariness, gets to play a dude who probably would also have a cocaine addiction and wear ridiculous suits and knockoff clothes and drive around singing Canto Pop. And then by the very end of this thing, all of this action and all of these characterizations and ridiculousness blends together. And the movie itself, as we said at the very top, it just becomes a knockoff of American action films in the best way I've ever seen, and leaned into so heavily and stylistically that it honestly, I was blown. Like this is beautiful and painterly, genuinely on like a digital experimental style level that blew my mind, which is why I think that Jamie's Black Hat comparison actually kind of rings true a little bit for me as well. And yeah, he just turns recognizable American tropes of a deeply American product into a Hong Kong fever dream with snap zooms and rapid cuts and step printing and insane. So it's both genre criticism and 85 minutes of like delirious cartoon action at the same time. I loved this movie.
Yeah. I think this is definitely one of his stronger films, 100%. Probably, I'd have to take a look, but I don't remember how many I've forwarded, but it's, I think, top 5. Like, I think this is an amazing film. Hawk is like, his direction is just unbelievable. He's implementing so many different techniques and different shots and things that you would think would not be in your traditional, and they aren't, traditional American, especially Van Damme film. Like all of those crazy zooms, like when the camera becomes a bullet, those the kind of swaying it does when Eddie's introduced, like following the pool ball, but then going back to his eye contact and starting that transition with the camera going into Van Damme's shoe out of all places. Like it's unbelievable. It's just incredibly creative and
POV shoe cam. Bring it back.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Shoe cam.
And I don't necessarily love Schneider in this. I mean, I just don't love Schneider in general, but I will say that I think him going off of Van Damme works for me. I think why it worked was because I got to see all Van Damme's reactions to that and him kind of playing off that comedic style. So that's what sold it for me, because I don't know. I don't like Schneider, and I did find him to be a little bit grating in this every once in a while. But I will give it up to him that he does play a pretty good physical role, like in the scenes where it's necessary for him to do so. So hats off to him for that. The writing is absolutely batshit insane. And I do.
It's moronic.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's so stupid. It's cartoonishly evil with like what the CIA guys are doing. Like that is to put a bunch of bombs and counterfeit genes all across America, and then to threaten the death of those civilians to the president for money is like such a Dr. Evil plan. I can't even begin to explain.
Yeah, Dr. Evil cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's over the top for like James Bond and shit. Like it's crazy. So I think that's very funny, and definitely works for the film and its kind of chaotic energy. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a 4. I think it's fantastic, and that ending. I mean, all the sequences with action are fantastic, but that boat sequence at the end for the finale, where he's just sliding across the ship and shooting a bunch of people and escaping the death of being crushed by containers, it's unbelievably good.
Killing people with nets and anchors. And
yeah, and it's so blunt and violent and bombastic as well, and just fast paced.
And this is the cut down version. Yeah, there's supposedly like 20 or 30 more minutes of Sammo Hung heroic bloodshed action in here.
I need to see that.
I would love to see that.
Oh my god!
Please give us,
so yeah,
knock off the extended cut, please.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, it's a 4.
I
For you,
I'm
Brandon.
definitely giving this a 4. It's super fun, super like creative. This is Troy Hawk just having fun, and what I love about Troy Hawk's first. Is this his first or second film for an American market? This is the second one.
Second and last.
I think this was the second one and last. Yes, this feels like a reaction to Double Team getting absolutely panned and hated.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to do all this crazy shit now.
It's
Just you
interesting
watch.
to see him really just take a lot of wild swings and just.
He was kind of like, fuck you. I'm going to do whatever the fuck.
I really respect that. I think it worked. I think this movie was incredibly well realized, like conceptually. Like it was just a knockoff on so many different levels. I don't know. I feel like a lot of these like Hong Kong directors, in a way, like arguably American action films are beneath them to a certain degree. So it's kind of funny to see them have to like pander to their sensibilities and have some successes and blunders. But I'm just like, Troy Hawk is like the GOAT, man. Like he is on another level from American action directors, and
Oh yeah.
It's not surprising that this movie wasn't well received, and that I wonder, how many things they could have done differently to this film to have made it a success. But if you just considered Van Damme's like career at that point, like I don't know if it would have really mattered what he did in this film. Like it may not have been successful either way, but I don't think that.
No, I mean, like, this killed Van Damme's theatrical career, and it killed the idea of Troy Hawk, like, making another American film, but that's just it.
It seems like Hawk wanted to just leave after this, rather than them, like, pushing him out. It almost, at least from what I just briefly read on the wiki, it's like, I'm out of here. Like, fuck this. Fuck this industry.
Yeah, well, that's just it. Like, it does feel like they were like, okay, we're going to create... We know that we're going to commit creative suicide, so fuck it.
Yeah,
let's just
go.
make the craziest thing either of us have
really
ever
went
done.
Into blatant glory. Like good for Troy Hawk. Like that was very, very impressive.
Yeah, they were like, let's burn Hollywood. Let's literally blow it up with explosive genes. Hollywood's going down.
The real dilemma I have is this year now, like, because Brendan Ross from Neon Dream Cinema Club keeps asking me if I'm going to screen Knockoff, and I'm like, I'm definitely going to screen it at some point.
Yes.
But I don't, like, do I do Bloodsport 30th anniversary this year, or now I'm considering Knockoff 25th anniversary? I don't know.
That is tough. Double feature.
I wonder.
I guess you don't want to do it on the day.
I think that this would play like gangbusters in a crowd of people.
I think this does need to be seen with an audience, though. I mean, people have seen Bloodsport enough times.
Yeah.
I don't think people truly, have discovered the just eccentric amazingness of Knockoff, and highly recommend it.
Yeah.
No, because the Double Team, I think by now has been kind of appropriately reclaimed by a lot of people. This needs to be on the top of people's priority list to be getting screenings.
I feel like it was on Netflix up until, I don't know, not even like a month or two ago, and I went to look it up today, and I was like, oh damn, it's not there anymore.
That's how I watched it the first time, actually, because I was just going through Van Damme movies, and I was like, oh sweet, this one's on Netflix. So I just checked it out, and I could not believe the direction the first time. The plotting and all the craziness kind of threw me back a bit, so I gave it the 3 the first time. But like I remember distinctly once again watching that finale sequence and just being like, I need to go back to this. There's something special here. So
so everyone, please, if you have not seen Knockoff or Maximum Risk,
they're both good,
fun movies. So go out and see how Van Damme killed his career by putting his clout on the line for Hong Kong filmmakers to experiment and do in both cases really good action.
For providing that platform for these guys, they deserved a shot, and they took it.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Yep, it's a crazy thing that happened, and Van Damme was why it happened. So it's a huge part of his career and part of why we love him. And so go and check these out if you haven't seen them, and if you have, I don't know, give them a rewatch. But that, I think, is going to wrap it up for this week's episode. That was Maximum Risk from 1996 and Knockoff from 1998. Thanks so much, Brandon, for joining us and talking over these films with us and lending us your knowledge on Hong Kong and martial arts and Van Damme. If the people want to find you doing other stuff, where would they do that?
If you want to keep up with my monthly movie night at the Review Cinema on Roncesvalles and here in Toronto, you can follow at Black Belt Cinema on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I've even got a YouTube channel, a ton of fun movie trailers and stuff up there. If you want to check out some of the shirt designs that I do, most of them are movie related. You can follow Fatal_Stasis. If you want to follow my personal,
Yes, if anyone was wondering where I got my face-off shirt that you sometimes see me in,
nice.
in photos, that was from Brandon.
Yeah.
Designed that. And also, I can't recommend Black Belt Cinema enough either. I recently got to see Lady Terminator on a 35mm print because of Brandon, which was one of the most mind-melting experiences I've had in a theater in the last year.
Absolutely,
so.
I hope to be doing more mind-melting this year, so check it out. I'm Brandon's Limbs, Limbs. Guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem, dude. Thanks so much for joining us. For our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time, where we were supposed to wrap up January because this technically is the last week, but we've been having such a great response, and so many people have been watching the films that we felt like we wanted to do a little treat, a little encore. It is the 5th anniversary of the show as well, celebration, so we felt like we could break the rules and enter the 2000s and the 2010s for a brief moment, and we are going to do one last encore Jean-Claude episode. Wow. Where we are going to be talking about his relationship with director John Hyams. We are going to be doing Universal Soldier Regeneration and Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning double feature next week exclusively on the Patreon.
And Dolph is back
too. And Dolph is back too. Yes. This is why it connected, because we did Dolph Month and we covered Universal Soldier during Dolph Month. So Van Damme made an appearance in Dolph Month. We felt like we needed to do the reverse as well. So it's going to wrap up both months together, seeing what both of those guys are doing in the direct-to-video action scene with John Hyams, the son of Peter Hyams, who directed Time Cop and Sudden Death, and they are both two of my favorite direct-to-video action films, just plainly ever. So,
so good.
It's going to be a good episode.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
Forward to that one. Damn, give the people what they want. I say
yes. That's right. So patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. If you're interested in that, that's next week's episode. And then the week after, we resume regular scheduled programming. It has been an entire month of Van Damme, and we're going to miss him. We're definitely going to come. There's still a couple we didn't hit. We could talk about some of the direct-to-video stuff. There's a couple in there that we skipped along the way. I do want to talk about Nowhere to Run at some point. Yeah. I want to pair that with maybe an old Western, because that is, in my opinion, his most purely dramatic film that he ever tried to make. It has the least action of any of his films, but I did like it quite a bit. But in 2 weeks' time, over on the main feed, we are going to be back doing an episode with a special guest, and we are going to be going William Peter Blatty mode, and we are going to be talking about The Ninth Configuration from 1980, starring Stacy Keach, and we are going to be pairing it with a 1982 film directed by Roger Christian called The Sender, which I have not seen. But Roger Christian, the guy who directed Battlefield Earth, which is the only film that I've seen by him.
Let's go.
I am very curious what a 1982 film by his is, and the pairing of it and William Peter Blatty interests me. So that's what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks' time with a special guest who selected those. But that being said, I think that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.
Keep it sleazy.
Hell yeah, dude.
This is really not my song. I bought it in Hong Kong. It's a knockoff. I confess that this is really not my voice, although I had a choice. It's a knockoff, so close to real. The look, the feel, so close, and yet the paint's still wet. You keep thinking that you're really holding hands. Sorry, that's no hand. It's a knockoff. Just my luck that I would look into your eyes. Then I realized they were knockoffs, so close to real. The love